acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Under Standing Order 26, the committee must take all evidence in public session. This includes answers to questions on notice. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. The Senate has endorsed the following test of relevance of questions at estimates hearings. Any questions going to the operations or financial positions of the departments and agencies which are seeking funds in estimates are relevant questions for the purpose of estimates hearings. I remind officers that the Senate has resolved that there are no areas in connection with the expenditure of public funds where any person has a discretion to withhold details or explanations from the Parliament or its committees unless the Parliament has expressly provided otherwise. The Senate has resolved that an officer of a department of the Commonwealth shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked of the officer to superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policies or factual questions about when and how policies were adopted. Witnesses are reminded of the Senate order specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised. I incorporate the public immunity statement into the Hansard. I remind senators of their obligations under the Behaviour Code for Australian parliamentarians to treat witnesses with dignity, courtesy, fairness and respect. An officer called to answer a question for the first time should state their full name and the capacity in which they appear. I now welcome Senator the Honourable Tim Ayres, Minister for Industry and Innovation and Minister for Science, representing the Treasurer. Minister, do you wish to make an opening statement?
No.
Okay. I welcome representatives from the Department of Treasury, Housing Group and representatives from Housing Australia. I note I think you've both tabled an opening statement. Do you wish to add to that?
No, Chair. We tabled, in the interest of time at the last hearing, we tabled an opening statement for the benefit of senators, really that just explains the functions that are now part of the housing group within the Department of the Treasury, because that's obviously changed since earlier in 2025. Okay. But that's now available on the Hansard for those that are interested.
Okay, thank you. We will go...
Chair, sorry, it's Kathy Armour here from Housing Australia. We have an opening statement which we'd like to take the time to read. It is a new opening statement.
Okay,
it's not a hangover from the last meeting. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. My name's Kathy Armour. I'm a board member and I'm the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee of Housing Australia. I'm joining you here today as a representative of the Board of Housing Australia, as our chair is unable to attend this hearing. As you may be aware, the chair has advised the minister that she'll be stepping down from her role later this month. And I want to acknowledge Ms Austin's significant contribution to Housing Australia during a transformative time for it. Personally, I've enjoyed working with Ms Austin, who has been dedicated to our purpose of improving housing outcomes for Australians and who has provided a vision of how the organisation can achieve this. I'd like to take the opportunity to update the committee on the progress of Housing Australia's programs. First, I'd like to start with the work the team is doing to support Australians into home ownership. Since the Home Guarantee Scheme commenced in 2020, we have supported almost 260,000 Australians to buy their own homes sooner. Over the past few years, this program has consistently supported 1 in 3 first home buyers across Australia. The recent expansion of this scheme, as the Australian Government's 5% deposit scheme on 1 October 2025, is supporting aspiring homeowners in line with expectations. Further assistance for Australians into home ownership is also planned as Housing Australia prepares for the launch of Help to Buy, which is a shared equity scheme that will allow eligible home owners with as little as a 2% deposit to access a contribution of 30 to 40% of their home's value from the Australian Government. This will make home ownership achievable for thousands of Australians. Turning now to our programs that provide funding to social and affordable housing, I'm pleased to note that Housing Australia is building momentum in our funding commitments as our partners are building more homes. In July, we announced contracts have been entered into for 279 projects under the first two funding rounds of the Housing Australia Future Fund Facility and the National Housing Accord Facility. Funding committed to these projects will support 18,650 new dwellings nationwide, backed by a $14 billion investment across every state and territory, one of Australia's largest social and affordable housing commitments to date. We are about 6 months into a 5-year delivery window and progress is building. 889 homes have now been completed, 9,501 are under construction and 8,260 are in planning. Many of these homes will soon be available for tenants in need of a safe place to live, ranging from affordable housing options for essential workers to secure social housing for vulnerable Australians who need it most. Building on the success of rounds 1 and 2, we are working with Government and Treasury to design round 3 to accelerate delivery in partnership with community housing providers and state and territory governments. We are also progressing applications under the National Housing Infrastructure Facility Crisis and Transitional Housing Program, which will provide new accommodation for women and children experiencing family and domestic violence and youth at risk of homelessness. And work continues to administer our other social and affordable housing programs under the Affordable Housing Bond Aggregator and the other streams of the National Housing Infrastructure Facility. In total, from July 1, 2024 through to the end of October, our funding programs have supported projects in which 1,271 homes have been completed. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the dedicated people who work at Housing Australia. There have been many great people who have contributed to improving housing outcomes over the years since Housing Australia was first established. The current board and team are committed to building on the achievements of the organisation, working together to navigate an expanded mandate and a period of transformation as we've implemented new functions. I'm grateful to the entire team for their ongoing work that, together with our partners, leads to more housing and increased access to home ownership. Finally, Chair and committee members, I appreciate your interest in Housing Australia. In responding to your questions today, I'd like to emphasise that Housing Australia is a delivery agency implementing the specific programs to support the housing agenda of the government. And we're looking forward to questions on policy and being best directed to Treasury. Thank you, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms Armour. We'll go to questions now. Just before we start, I just want to remind everyone that we've got a hard marker of 8 o'clock tonight, so I would implore everybody to be as succinct and efficient as possible with your questions and also the answers, and so that we can make sure everyone has all of the topics that they want covered done so. And I'll be keeping close to time with everyone, and we'll do 10-minute blocks. So I'll throw to the opposition first. Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much, Chair. We exchanged some letters with the Treasury Department about having an official here who could speak to the modelling.
Yes, Senator. We received that letter. I saw that letter this morning, I think.
Can that person come to the table, please?
Senator,
Thanks.
Nick is going to join us at the table.
Thanks. Good afternoon. I just want to ask you some questions about the modelling. Did the government ask for Treasury modelling on the 5% deposit scheme?
Nicholas Dowie, the Assistant Secretary of the City's Planning, Infrastructure and Analysis Branch. So, Senator, the Housing Minister's Office did ask Treasury to undertake modelling of the scheme.
Okay. And what did the modelling show?
The modelling showed The modelling showed that the expansion of the 5% deposit scheme will increase dwelling prices by 0.6% nationally over 6 years.
0.6 or 0.5?
0.6%.
Okay. The Prime Minister has said the modelling suggested a 0.5% increase over 6 years. You're saying 0.6?
I'm saying that the modelling that Treasury undertook showed that dwelling prices would increase by 0.6% nationally after 6 years.
Over 6 years, okay. And what sort of a report was that modelling presented in? Or what sort of a form was it provided?
So the model itself is a more complicated thing in terms of a range of calculations that are done. So Treasury provided a summary of the results of that exercise.
Okay, so, but in that model, did you look at the risks beyond the 0.6%? Like, did you do scenarios?
So it might be, I'll just step back and take you through the model we've built and how it works, which might help inform the answers to these questions. So we've estimated the impacts of the effect of the 5% deposit scheme expansion on dwelling prices using a model that Treasury developed in 2023. That model was heavily informed by the work of Trent Saunders and Peter Tulip from the Reserve Bank of Australia that uses around 40 years of observed data on the impact of changes to supply, demand and the costs of owning a home, particularly mortgage rates, on house prices, rents and housing supply.
Right.
So what that model does is it estimates what will happen to house prices if there is a shock, that is a reduction or an increase to supply, demand or the cost of home ownership on average dwelling prices.
Okay, so did you do a range of scenarios or did it just spit out one outcome?
So what we did with the model is we took the estimates of the impact of the scheme in terms of what we thought the scheme would do in terms of increasing the number of people who'd be entering the market, and what we modelled was the effect of that increased demand on dwelling prices.
Yeah, so the Treasury decides on what the inputs are, the parameters, and then it spits you out. Is it one number or a range of numbers, or?
Well, it spits out what we best think the impact is on prices, which is what that 0.6% figure is.
0.6% over 6 years?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the Prime Minister said it's 0.5%. That's not what you have.
All I can talk to is what our modelling shows, which is the 0.6% figure.
Okay, and are there any? Is there a statement of risks, or did Treasury produce some more information alongside that one number?
What we did is we modelled. Well, we did what we're able to do with the model that we've built, and what the model that we've built does is it shows the impact of dwelling prices to a shock in supply or demand.
I understand that, but I'm asking. Did you just provide one number, or was there a briefing which set out your view that it could be a range of scenarios, or there would be other risks that could impact that number?
So without going to, I guess, the specifics of the policy advice that may have been provided, our model shows that 0.6% figure.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like it's a very big piece of work.
No, it just
in terms of the product.
It just hasn't reached a big number. You can ask the official as many times as you like the same question, but he can't answer it in a different way.
I'm asking you whether you provided any material in addition to the number.
So what we provided a summary of what the results of the modelling showed, which was that 0.6% figure.
Okay, so let me just get this right. So the Minister's Office asks the Treasury for modelling before the policy was announced?
We were asked for modelling in late July 2025.
July of this year. So this was announced in May, and so you asked for your expert advice on price impacts in July?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, Senator, I'm confident that this isn't the only advice that was provided to government about the implementation of this program.
Okay.
So I'm sure there were other pieces of advice that went to government about this matter.
Okay, but
So just to be clear, this my comment around the dates I provided was around the modelling purely, around the impact of that. So that's about how we've used our model to generate that answer.
I understand. I'm asking when the request came through. You said it came through in July before. Is that not right?
No. In terms of the request to do the work, the generator, the figure that I mentioned came through in July 2025.
Came through in July. Okay. So effectively, in a supply-constrained environment, this demand-side policy was announced during an election campaign, and then the modelling was sought afterwards.
I'm advised, Senator. I just sought some advice on this. This issue is that, and if we can provide any more advice on notice, we will. But that, in advance of the announcement, the Treasury provided the government with some advice. I don't have any more information than that. It's sort of what you'd expect, I suppose.
Was it modelling?
I have just exhausted the outer bounds of my knowledge on this subject, and we'll have the next estimates is moments away. So if we can provide any more information, we will. But that's what I understand it to
Okay.
be.
Well, let me ask the official then. So, are you aware of other modelling endeavours that have been done on this scheme in the past year?
The modelling I'm aware of is what I've described, which is the evidence that I've given, but that doesn't preclude the fact that other advice was given through other channels. Just talking about the advice from the model that we've built.
Okay, so you give the advice. So did you give the advice in person to the minister, or did it go up the food chain?
The advice was provided in writing.
In writing to the minister's office or to the
minister's office.
Okay, and was there any back and forth about that? Any questions asked?
So, the 25th of July, we sent preliminary estimates to the Housing Minister's Office. Final estimates were provided on the 12th of August 2025, and there were some supplementary questions that were asked a few days later about that, which Treasury provided further clarifying information between the 15th to the 20th of August.
You're at 9 minutes, Senator Bragg.
Okay, do you want to rotate the call?
If you've got one more or 1 minute more.
My last question on this then is, so your request on the changes or the impact of this scheme to prices came through in July. Did that come from the Housing Minister's Office?
Yes.
Okay, and there was no other, the Prime Minister's Office didn't ask for any advice on this issue?
The only advice that we've received, the only request we've received that I'm aware of is from the Housing Minister's Office.
Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Pocock?
Just following along from that questioning, you said in your model you calculated or you made an assumption, quote, about what we thought would be the increase in demand as a consequence of the 5% deposit scheme. What lies underneath what we thought? On what basis did you arrive at what we thought? Because it seems to me a shock, you predict a shock, it's going to be a change that you assume will have a certain effect. This isn't something that's happened in recent times, so you have to make a calculation. So on what basis have you arrived at your thought?
Dr. Nerida Hunter, First Assistant Secretary, Homelessness and Housing Policy Division. My division worked with our modelling unit to provide the input assumption. I can take you through that assumption. So we looked at the best available data that we had available around the potentially newly eligible participants, including data from the ABS, as well as confidential data we had submitted by lenders who took into account eligibility criteria and the financial incentives. Our estimate was that in the first year, around an additional 26,000 first home buyer households in the first 12 months will use the expanded scheme to purchase a home. However, not all of those first home buyer households are new into the market, and I can take you through our assumptions about the composition of that cohort. So 3,100 first home buyer households would not have purchased a home otherwise. Our estimate was that 12,900 first home buyer households would bring forward their decision to purchase from future years due to the increased availability of financing, and 10,000 first home buyers that otherwise would have used an LMI to enable their purchase will now purchase with increased borrowing capacity as they were able to avoid LMI. I can take you through subsequent years, but in the subsequent years our estimate reduced, so we expect the additional first home buyer households to be around 13,100, and of that 3,100 first home buyer households will purchase a home in the first year, and 10,000 would have purchased a home regardless of the expansion.
Actually, not my question, Dr. Hunter. My question is, on what basis did you arrive at those numbers? I mean, can you tell me of an event or events that the banks or others advised you about changed behaviour? What basis is there for arriving at those numbers?
So with all programs, we are estimating to the best extent that we can the demand for those programs so that we can provide advice to government around the cost of those programs. We can support estimates of operational funding to organisations like Housing Australia who will deliver those programs. We don't always have perfect input data, so we look for the best available data that we have. In this case, we use data from the ABS as well as confidential data submitted by lenders.
Could you provide that background data and analysis structure to us, please?
I can take that on notice.
Thank you. Did you run, and Senator Bragg has also pursued this, but I haven't heard a clear answer. Did you run around your best guesses? Essentially, what you're describing are essentially guesses based on as much good information as you can. I understand that that's what we have to do sometimes, but did you run a variety of assumptions across your model about the impact on demand?
So, in terms of arriving at the assumption, I can speculate around general commentary around developing assumptions, and that is, it is a process of identifying data, assessing the quality of that data, and then working collaboratively with experts, in this case lenders, to test assumptions. But at the conclusion of that process, we do need to arrive at a single estimate, because that estimate is used to support operational funding for Housing Australia.
So that's a choice you make?
I would say
because
that,
you can change your inputs in any model?
So I would say in the ordinary course of events with all program administrations, at each update you provide the best estimate that you can. Then you can get, in this case, we will revise those estimates for government as program experience emerges. So the more mature a program is, the better those estimates become.
Could you have run alternative scenarios? I mean, you're saying no, you didn't run them, but could you have?
So our function was to arrive at a single estimate so that we could operationalise the program. Obviously, the actual demand for the program is determined by the parameters of the program. So our estimate in no way determines who is eligible or not eligible for the program, but we are trying to give information to government around expected costs, operational impact for Housing Australia, and that input was also used in the modelling of house prices.
Did you include in your model any assumptions about supply? Or what were the assumptions you included about supply?
So I think I'd need to take that on notice.
Could you provide us with the full description of the model and the way it was conducted? I'm right at the edges of my knowledge as well in these matters, but it surprises me that there weren't different scenarios run, and I am curious about other assumptions. Have you read commentary by... is that okay to take that on notice?
Yeah,
thank you. Have you read commentary, I think it was from memory, from Saul S. Lake about characterising the assumption of a 0.6 increase in house prices directly attributable to this program over 6 years as being based on, in his view, I'm quoting from memory and I may be wrong, as overly optimistic or leaning on the optimistic side. Have you looked at his commentary?
Senator, can I interject that there's been a wide range of commentators on this measure, some who've said, as you pointed out, that they're expecting something different. Others who've said they broadly think that the Treasury forecasts have been, about right, with a variety of reputable people in all parts of that spectrum.
I know that. I'm just asking you particularly about the suggestion that the assumptions in the model are optimistic.
Well,
I wanted to hear what your response
Senator,
is.
the Treasury has done this piece of work. It has produced a result. It is not a range, it is a single number. And I know that doesn't suit the political narrative of either Senator Bragg or yourself, desperately searching for a bigger number. But the number is the number. And whether that turns out to be exactly the amount that is achieved, well, time will tell. That is the nature of modelling. That is the advice that was provided. There is house prices since the turn of the century have gone up by an average of 7% every year. This model makes an estimation about what might happen over the course of 6 years, 0.1% a year, 0.5% over 5 years, 0.4% over 4 years. It is a small number. I know that's frustrating, but I'm not sure how the official can answer the question any differently. If you input different numbers into a model, you produce a different result. I'm sure there are think tanks and banks and economic commentators who'll produce a different result. Some of it because they're honestly just inputting a different set of numbers. Some of them because they have an absolute commitment to a different a different sort of set of views. Some commentators say it would have a lower impact than what Treasury would suggest. I mean, it's all very interesting, but at the end of the day, there's a number.
Well, actually, it's...
9 minutes.
Thank you. It's a really important number, and this is not about...
It's a really small number.
You're asserting it's about political purpose. I'm really interested in it because I do want to know how the model worked, and I'm looking forward to reading how you've constructed it. But given that prices have increased by 1.1% in a single month, the curiosity about the modelling and the assumption within it, I think, is a very valid question to be asked.
But there's no relationship. But this is the thing about modelling, and this is the thing about rises in prices. There are all sorts of price impacts out there. It's very hard to tell whether it's the weather, the cricket season starting, the different approach of lenders, all sorts of things impact on price rises. An average 7% rise every year. The government's approach here is we want to work hard to increase housing supply. We want to give young people a chop out so they can actually get a crack. I had someone in my office in tears about this issue, saying she bought her first home only because of this. Honestly, it's pretty hard-hearted to go on about it the way that you two are.
it's not about being... I just want to defend myself here. We are
And then
here
I'm
to
gonna
understand the
rotate.
basis of decision-making, and the lines of questioning are entirely appropriate, in my view. Indeed, I view it as a responsibility to understand the rationale here, and I look forward to the information about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I know Senator Canavan has a couple of questions as well. That's all right. I mean, I think I'll be very quick. I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Hunter, how many people did you say, how many more people will be buying a home under the new scheme?
So we estimate that 3,100 first home buyer households in the first year who would not have purchased otherwise.
Right.
And I think, if I recall, there was also some evidence about people bringing forward...
Yes.
People who would...
Bring up.
I assume that means had anticipated that they might take a decade or 5 years to save, and then have brought forward...
How many was
purchase.
that?
Yep.
What was the number?
So 12,900 first home buyer households will bring forward their decision to purchase from future years.
Right.
Additionally, and I think this is significant in case it was lost the first time round when I mentioned it, is that 10,000 first home buyers who would otherwise have used LMI will have increased borrowing capacity, and so our expectation is that they will be able to purchase in a segment of the market that is different to what they otherwise would have purchased in.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Ms. Armour, when your opening statement, you mentioned that the home equity program, what's it called? Shared equity program? Sorry? Help to Buy. That's the one I'm thinking of. Is due any day now? When you said any day now, what did you mean?
So Housing Australia is in the process of being ready for the launch of that program. There are a number of matters that we're bottoming out, if you like, with Treasury, because we're administering the program, if you like, as the agent for the Commonwealth, and so those matters are close to resolution, but they're just...
Right, so we don't have a launch date. Does Treasury have a launch date? Do we know when it's going to be opened up so that people can, so the floodgates can be opened for all these people that wanted to share their house with the government?
Senator, I'm not sure I would characterise it as floodgates. It's 10,000 places a year in a market of 700,000 property transactions a year. But the launch date is a matter for government, Senator. I'm sorry, we can't give you further advice about that.
And the Help to Buy scheme is only open to first home buyers, or is it for anybody?
Scott Langford, CEO of Housing Australia. It's primarily targeted at first home buyers. I will just need to check the rules about, because I get confused sometimes about the programs, whether there's an exception for certain circumstances, but it is targeted at first home buyers.
The Minister might know. I think it was an election commitment in 2022.
I'm sorry, I was temporarily distracted. Could you ask again, please?
The shared equity scheme, is that only available to first home buyers?
Let me just check for you.
Yep.
No, thank you. It's open to all people, all Australians who don't currently own a home, and there are other design criteria, of course, that I don't have in front of me, and maybe officials might be in a position to respond to it. But it means that somebody, for example, who has owned a home with their partner but has experienced family and domestic violence and is, that would not then be eligible for some of the other schemes, has access to that scheme.
The first home guarantee was extended to women that had left a relationship too, was it not?
I think that's right.
Single parents.
Single parents.
Right.
You could hear hear my colleague from behind me, but yes.
All
yes.
right. Thank you. So, do you know when the launch date is for the Help to Buy scheme, shared equity scheme?
I don't know. If we can provide that information to you over the next little while, we can. Yep.
Okay. So this program was announced in May 2022. It was legislated in November 2024. We're now at November 2025. It's clearly reasonably complicated to establish. Can you tell me why it's taken a year to even get this far, Mr. Langford?
What I can tell you, in addition to that, is we've committed publicly to that later this year. So we're, early November, so there's not a long time to go. We haven't set a date yet. It was, as I'm sure you're aware, the subject of some delay in the Parliament. Given the time, I won't go through all of that.
So late this year, it's going to launch?
Yeah, I believe it's later this year.
Okay. Can I ask Mr. Langford, how many people at Housing Australia have been working on this program?
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to ask my colleague, Ms Braid, to come to the table.
Sure.
She might have a breakdown of that, and we'll try and break that down for you. But we started with a small number of staff, and we've been increasing those in readiness for the operations to commence. Ms Braid, are you able to give the current headcount for
While you're looking for that, could I provide just some further information?
Yes.
So on the Help to Buy bills, they pass a Parliament on the 27th of November 2024. Help to Buy does rely on a state power referral, and of course that takes time, as each jurisdiction needs to pass referral legislation for the scheme to operate in their jurisdiction.
So how does that work if you've got states that already have that? Well, some states already have a scheme that's similar, or some states already have shared equity schemes. Do you have to negotiate something different for each state? I should ask.
So my colleague Mr Rimmer may have some additional comments on this. So the state schemes, or the passage of legislation in the state, is to give effect to the Commonwealth scheme,
right.
And states can make independent decisions to continue their own programs.
Okay. Right.
And so those referrals have been complete for Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales. The legislation is currently before the West Australian and South Australian parliaments, and we, as Tasmania has not yet introduced its referral, and obviously
right.
Northern Territory ACT.
Ms Braid, sorry, how many people have you had working on this shared equity scheme?
Lisa Braid, Chief Operating Officer of Housing Australia. So when we started out establishing the Help to Buy program, we started with one project lead, and we progressively built out a team from there. So as at the 22nd of October, we have 8 permanent staff in the team and 26 staff on fixed-term agreements.
Right.
So
and have you set up the investment vehicle? There is some sort of fund that is going to be responsible for the equity, or a debt facility is going to be responsible for sharing the equity, so that the infrastructure that will enable the launch date, I'm assuming, has been set up?
So Housing Australia acts as the delivery agent for the Commonwealth,
yeah.
So it's a pass-through arrangement.
Right, okay. Okay. So was Housing Australia made aware of the expansion of the first home guarantee before it was announced? Because I would imagine government might have cut your lunch a bit. Same pool of home buyers that would go from shared equity to now first home buyers guarantee. And you must need a sort of critical mass to make this program viable.
Senator, I believe that we were told at the same time that everyone else was when it was announced as part of the election commitments in relation to the expansion of the home guarantee scheme.
Did you press the alarm bells and go, woo, woo, that's going to be a problem for shared equity scheme?
Senator, we serve to implement the mandate that the government sets for us, and that mandate has included updates to both programs. We anticipate that those programs will serve the objectives that have been set.
Do you think that you'll reach your 10,000 a year objective for shared equity?
Senator, I can't speculate on that. Our role is to set up the program and to launch it with the conditions that have been set in the mandate and the program directions by government.
Will it be viable if you don't reach 10,000 a year?
Can I, just from a policy perspective, the policy intent is that some people in the market will use the 5% deposit scheme alone. Others will use the Help to Buy scheme alone, and some will use both of them.
How do you use both of them?
You can't, sorry.
You can't use both
sorry,
of them?
Mr.
Oh, sorry, I'm wrong about this.
Just so we don't cause confusion, you can't be eligible for both.
Okay, I'm wrong about that. The program rules for Help to Buy set out 10,000 places per year.
Yep.
And all,
First home guarantee, though, is uncapped, so anybody can use that. Why
Sure.
would I choose to go and use the shared equity scheme if I can own my own home with a guarantee from the government rather than them owning equity in my house?
Senator, different people will be in different financial circumstances with different relationships with their banks, different capacity to pay.
Are we double counting when we say 10,000 people are going to use shared equity, and I still haven't quite worked out exactly how many people are going to use the new expanded first home guarantee?
The estimate is 70,000 will use that per annum.
70,000 per annum,
Yep.
and 10,000 for shared equity.
Yes.
Do you think that maybe the shared equities take-up will be lower because of the expanded first home guarantee?
Senator, from a policy perspective, that's not our assumption. Our assumption is that that program will be fully utilised.
When Treasury
you're at
hears...
10 minutes.
Yep, sorry, I was going to throw to Senator Canavan, but I've used my 10 minutes, I'm sorry. When the government announces how many new first home, or how many home buyers there are going to be, are they potentially double counting because one program eats into the numbers of the other?
No, Senator, that's not the way we see it from a policy perspective.
The group who are in that 10,000 cohort when you sort of think through who they are, that they would not be able to service a mortgage for the same priced home under the 5% scheme. Yeah, I mean, the amount that they would have to provide is lower, and if the government's taking a 40% equity position or whatever, their repayments, their servicing payments are lower too. That they are a different group. The broader scheme is universal. And much, this scheme is much smaller. 10,000 is a small number.
Okay.
In terms of the
Thanks, Chair.
overall.
Thank you. I'll go to Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair.
And then I'll come to you.
I don't mind. You're right, Senator Bragg. I'm not in a particular rush, and I do ask my questions with recognising my ignorance of these areas. I've been a bit distracted trying to kill the absurd notion of net zero. But I wanted to take a different tack as I've been listening on the modelling to the 5% scheme. Has there been estimates of what proportion of loans will be using the 5% deposit scheme? Say total loans issued, either of value or number.
Senator, I think I mentioned just before that the current estimate is that 70,000 guarantees will be issued per year. That's up from 44,000 in the previous arrangement. And that's in a housing market where there's about 700,000 home sales each year, bit more.
Is that finance every? Is it 700,000 mortgages written every year? Or you're not sure?
I'm not sure that we have that exact number. It's a reasonable question, Senator, but I'm not sure we have that exact number.
So that would be 10% roughly? If all of them were initiating new mortgages, which is probably not the case, but we're getting into double digits. What happens, and this is separate from modelling, I don't, try to have a quick look, but well, first of all, is there a product disclosure statement for the 5% scheme?
Senator, I might ask my colleague Ms Jarman, who's responsible for the scheme, to come to the table. And while she's doing that, it's important to say that the distribution for the scheme is with a panel of lenders, and they are the point of contact with people who are accessing the scheme.
Right.
Ms Jarman, if you can just clarify in relation to the disclosures.
Thank you. Emma Jarman, Executive Leader, 5% Deposit Scheme. There is not a product disclosure statement for the scheme. However, there is an information guide that lenders must provide customers at the time of the application process.
Why isn't there a product disclosure statement? I mean, we require other financial institutions to do this for insurance products, loans, even bank accounts, I think. But, you know, the like that, we require them to provide customers with very detailed information about all different contingencies that anyone can look at. Why hasn't government prepared the same documents it requires financial institutions to do?
I'd have to take on notice to give you the exact details, but from what I understand, it would be the regulatory obligations that apply to Housing Australia.
Yeah, well, that's my question. Why aren't the same regulations applied then?
Senator, we can take on notice to give you that fulsome response, but I'd also add that the guarantee is actually provided to the bank, not to the borrower. So it seeks to the lender, rather. Sorry. So it seeks to provide a guarantee to the lender, notwithstanding it enables someone to borrow from that lender. So the lender is still required to act through the responsible lending criteria and through their regulatory lens in making an assessment and making that loan, and whatever disclosures they're required to make in relation to that loan.
But if I buy an MLI product from a bank through a private transaction, would they need a PDS for the LMI product to the customer?
Sorry, Senator, I don't know the answer to that.
Probably would. So it's very similar to LMI by the sound of it. But just take me through what happens in the case that there is a default of someone who's taken out a 5% scheme. Can you take me through what happens in the case of the default, who's exposed, and what happens particularly to the customer, to the homeowner, if they default?
Sure. In the case of a borrower becoming in financial distress, the lender will manage that through their usual customer care and hardship processes.
I just want to cut to the chase because I don't want to hold other people up. I'm saying it's default.
Yeah, so,
it's happened, so
I'm
sure there's other things, but there's a default. What happens after the default?
So when that occurs and the property has been sold, if there is a shortfall between what the sale price is and what is owed to the bank would then approach Housing Australia to claim on the guarantee that has been provided.
Right. And so the homeowner is not exposed at all?
The guarantee covers a maximum of 15% under the general stream or 18% of the value under the single parent stream. If there are an additional shortfall, that is for the lender to potentially pursue the borrower for.
So they're exposed beyond that. Is that exposure outlined in the fact sheet?
That would be outlined, I would imagine, in the standard lending agreements.
But is it outlined in your fact sheet that you provide?
I'd have to check
I don't think it is. I
detail.
just had a quick look through, but I couldn't
Take
find
that
it.
on notice.
Yeah.
Seems strange that you didn't let the customer know that, hey, if you end up with being more than 15% underwater for the normal stream, you're on the hook. Okay. I've got more questions. I've got a lot more questions now, but I'm happy to keep rotating because I know it's others' interests.
I think they exempted themselves from the credit laws.
Sounds like.
Yeah. I'll go to Senator Bragg.
Do you mind? Yeah.
Then Senator Pocock.
Yeah.
And then we might go to Senator Waters and come back to you, if that's okay.
Yeah. So just following on what Senator Canavan was pursuing there, I mean, it is the case that the Help to Buy scheme has been exempted from the credit laws, isn't it?
It is, Senator.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry, this is just a bit curious. So
just for,
I
clarity,
thought Senator Canavan asked you about this before, and you didn't know.
Sorry, Senator Canavan was talking about the 5% deposit scheme. You've just asked about the Help to Buy scheme.
Sorry, I thought you meant the Help to Buy. Okay.
So look, the 5% scheme exempt as well?
No, the 5% scheme was not exempt from the consumer credit law. We'd have to take on
just
notice the exact technicalities.
Yep.
Okay. But the Help to Buy was.
Okay. So look, just to be efficient. So look, just back on this modelling. So you say 0.6% over 6 years. Why did you choose 6? Well, where's my? Oh, there you are. There. Where's my friend gone? So you did the 6 year. Why did you choose 6 years?
Senator, we've modelled it over 6 years because we think this is the point at which the effect on dwelling prices is fully realised.
Right.
And we've settled on that 6 years because that's our assessment informed by around 40 years of data on the Australian housing market from which our model is based, on what an appropriate time period is for the full effect of this measure to wash through the housing system.
Okay. So what's the increase you expect in the next 12 months?
So the model that, well, the model that we've built and the assumption that we've made that 6 years is the right time means that we've modelled the price impact at over that 6 year period. We've not modelled it incrementally before that period.
So is it linear?
No, it's over a 6 year period. So
yeah,
it's
but
over.
Is it the same amount that ratchets up every year?
No, it's not. It's not like a linear. It's at the end of a 6 year period. So we've done it over at the end of that 6 years. The price point is
I understand
0.6%.
But what about for these next 12 months?
We've not modelled it over.
You didn't do that?
No.
Okay. So, are you aware of the orders of the Senate which have sought to have this modelling provided?
So yeah, I'm aware that that's happened. I haven't caught up with the OPDs that may have happened today, so I'm not sure if you're referring about that. I'm not sure which way the Senate.
I think we've been told by Senator Gallagher there's a lot of OPDs these days, but nonetheless, the Senate has ordered the document. Now, this might be a question for you, Minister, but we've just heard evidence from the official that the modelling was provided in July. Your letter to the Senate says that it's a cabinet document and it can't be provided. So I'm trying to work out what's the basis of not providing this modelling to the Senate. Now we've heard what it says.
Well, I suppose I'll see if there's any more information that I can provide to you about the basis for that. I mean, it is difficult to keep track with the sort of industrial scale and the sort of puerile approach that you and your colleagues have taken to orders for production of documents. They used to be serious matters. They used to be done sparingly, not as giant sort of like some of those Russian fishing ships that trawl through the Antarctic, without any sense of targeting or seriousness.
This is about modelling on that house price.
There are now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things, and if your order for production of documents, drafted by you, drafted by your staff, drafted by artificial intelligence, who knows what, is imprecise and is hard to answer, I do know that that there are many staff who are engaged, instead of in normal work on behalf of Australians, doing staffing work for you, trying to comply with orders for production of documents, sometimes which have a 24-hour requirement. It is too silly for words, the approach that you've taken and debauching the Senate processes in the way that you have. We'll try and take it as seriously as we can. If there's more information that I can provide you, I will, about the basis for that.
But I make the point that the official who's just described modelling on a major government program. This is not a fishing exercise. There's no Russian boats. It's about modelling for a government program.
Yeah, and they've told you.
Which you know about. So it's not a fishing
over
exercise.
6 years.
Yeah, but we want to see the piece of paper.
I know you want the number to be bigger.
No,
because it will suit your political narrative.
We want the piece of paper.
And the sort of hard-hearted scare campaign that you intend to run.
It's very secretive, isn't it?
There are very straightforward bases for declining to provide documents that are used.
It's not a cabinet document. You've already made the decision.
That are used to support cabinet decision making.
Well, you shouldn't mislead the Senate.
If that is not the basis upon which, if that is not the basis upon which this is not being provided, then I'm sure that if there's no other basis of to not provide it, that we will ultimately provide it.
Okay, we look forward to seeing the document.
But you have debauched the processes of the Senate with the approach that you have taken broadly. You cannot single this out from the hundreds of other orders that you and your colleagues
The Prime Minister of the country gave the wrong number on the modelling. He threw a 0.5. The official says 0.6.
It is.
We want to see the piece of paper.
It is.
You can't cover everything up.
Absolutely unreasonable.
You can't cover everything up.
Well, the official has said 0.6% over
Which is
6
different
years.
from what the Prime Minister said.
House prices
How do
since
we
the
trust
turn
you?
of the century have gone up by 7% every year. Now, I know that you simultaneously want to...
We just want the piece of paper.
Hard-hearted way, try and make the number bigger than it is.
He gave a different number to your Prime Minister.
And that you simultaneously want house prices to go up and to go down at the same time. It's an incoherent approach.
All right.
It's an approach that's damaged the Senate.
Chair, we're not going to get
in
into
terms of
the
order of
document, I
production
think.
of document.
Maybe we should move on to the next
approach
topic.
taken.
Yeah, I
and
think-
if you started to approach this, approach it seriously, we might take you seriously.
All right, well, let me ask about something else. I think that's a dead end. We're not going to get that document right now. So let me ask you about the appointment of this observer to the Housing Australia Board. So this is a question for you, Mr. Rimmer. The government's appointed an observer to the Board of Housing Australia. So these might be questions for you, Mr. Rimmer. Is that right? So,
I suspect it is, Senator.
so you've been appointed as the observer on the board.
Yes, Senator.
Okay. And when were you appointed?
I'll just have to consult my notes for the exact date, but I've attended 2 board meetings since then.
Yeah. And do you talk in these meetings?
I do if the chair requests me to talk.
Okay. And do you sit in on the parts of the meetings when they're discussing the financials or they're discussing funding arrangements?
Well, Senator, I've only been in 2 meetings so far, but I think the observer role that's set out in the legislation covers all parts of the board's operations.
Okay. So, and do you give your opinion on financial matters or investment matters or anything?
No, Senator. I would say I'm sometimes asked by the board to give a view about the underlying policy intent that government has provided. But my main role is to observe the operations of the board to ensure that in my role supporting the Minister for Housing, that she is enabled to have a full understanding of how Housing Australia as an agency is operating.
Okay. And so do you report back to the Housing Minister?
I talk to the Housing Minister about the operations of Housing Australia on a regular basis, Senator.
Okay. So is Housing Australia independent of government?
Senator, we've had a discussion about this at the last...
Well, it's very curious that you go to the board meetings. So that's why I'm asking you about it.
Senator, I would dispute that that's curious. There are... So for the... to start with, Housing Australia has had an observer role in place for some time, going back to when it was previously called NIFIC. So the first observer was appointed to what is now Housing Australia on the 8th of October 2020. So Housing Australia, NIFIC, has had a history of this role. Other specialist investment vehicles have similar arrangements. In some cases, they're observer roles. In some cases, they're full voting rights on the board for a senior public servant. But for example, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, Export Finance Australia and the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility all have this kind of arrangement. It's not novel, Senator.
So what sort of contributions do you make in the meeting?
I've answered that question, Senator.
Good ones, I imagine.
Well, the board may dispute that, Minister, but as a general rule, my role is to observe the operations of the board. I speak rarely and when asked.
Okay. And have you made any comments in board meetings about the investment judgments of the organisation?
No, Senator, and I would be very surprised if I would be very surprised if I was asked to provide commentary about the commercial decision-making functions of the organisation. That's not my role as an observer. That's a role that in the that in the legislative and governance arrangements is reserved to the board explicitly under the Act.
Senator Bragg, you're at 10 minutes. I'll rotate to Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to go to the relationship between house prices and wages. I'm looking at Westpac's Housing Pulse report that suggested that house prices this year will increase by 6%, next year by 9%. I think that's pretty close to the totality estimate for this year. Do you have a Treasury forecast about house prices for residential dwellings for the year 2026?
Karen Crossthwaite, First Assistant Secretary, Housing Supply
and Cities Division. Treasury doesn't have that kind of forecast for house prices in that way. As you'd be aware, there are, so you've mentioned wage cost as one of, and income as one of the
I'll come to that.
variables. Yep. So there are.
I'm interested in whether you have an estimate for house prices for next year. You don't. Why not?
Well, one reason for that is that the model that my colleague has described is designed to model housing supply and demand, and it's not a. We don't just sort of plug in numbers and see what happens to house prices. So it's designed to test what happens when there are shocks to supply and demand. And so we can look at what would happen to house prices if there is a supply or demand shock. But what we don't do is just sort of generally model what house prices might do.
So did the model that we've just been hearing about include assumptions about house prices over the coming 6 years?
Did it include
assumptions?
It's hard to see how you could do your model without such an estimate.
Senator, just before we get to that, the Treasury, as I understand it, does not model asset prices in general. It doesn't model where the share market will be in 12 months. It doesn't model where industrial real estate will be in 12 months or 3 years. That's not a function that is undertaken in the department.
Let me pursue my question. Have you made a best guess of what you think in the model? Did you make an estimate of house prices in 2026?
So just to be clear on what the model is and what it isn't, what the model does is it estimates the impacts of prices as a result of changes to either supply or demand. So if you make some assumptions around how many additional people will be seeking to buy houses, it makes an estimate on that.
Yep.
And it estimates the impact of prices to changes in supply. That's how the model's been built, to be able to estimate the impact of those changes to the broader environment. What it doesn't do is it doesn't provide like a regular forecast of how it thinks house prices will move.
But in your model, what did you insert as an estimate of house prices in 2026?
Well, I don't believe we did. The model itself, just to be clear about how the model works, we put in estimates of what we think will happen to supply and demand, then the model tells us what the impact of prices will be. And in the case of the modelling that I've talked about earlier today, that was modelling that was done very specifically in terms of the impact of the government's 5% deposit scheme, which we did over a 6-year period. So we didn't use this model to estimate what house prices would look like in 2026.
I cannot see how you could run your model without an estimate of that. Leave that aside. Let's use Westpac, totality, whatever. It's looking at 9% next year, 6% in the current year. Nominal wage growth in the current year over the last 12 months around 3.4%. So house prices are growing at twice the rate of wages in the current period, it seems, leaving aside that we don't have a Treasury estimate about house prices. We know, and it's widely discussed, that we had a multiple of average house prices to wages 25 years ago at around 4, now we're over 8. If we continue to see, as we are in the current period, double the rate of house price increases relative to wages, will that not widen the gap in that multiple and relationship between wages and house prices? And isn't that a real concern to Treasury?
Senator, there are a wide range of things going on in the housing market on any given day. one of the things that's going on at the moment is the government has announced a range of measures to increase supply in the housing market. The National Cabinet decisions about the National Housing Accord are very relevant here. There is a wide range of activity across states, across local government, across the housing industry itself to expand supply. So all of those things go into questions about how overall house prices will change and how that relates to wages.
So what attention or analysis are you doing at Housing Australia about that relationship between wages and residential house prices? Because that is a real concern. I mean, yes, we can hope, we can do a range of measures, and we all hope that those will have a particular effect. But this must be something that you're looking at, is it not? Or are you paying no attention to that relationship?
Senator, for clarity, I'm with the Department of the Treasury, not Housing Australia. My colleague, Mr Langford, is CEO of Housing Australia. Treasury and the housing group within Treasury does a wide range of analysis, investigation, policy advice about, in other parts of Treasury, about the macroeconomic conditions in the country, and in Housing Group about the impact of the policy impact of, pardon me, of various housing supply measures and various government decisions. That's a summary of our role in the system. So the question that you've framed to me is quite general in nature. If you give me a more specific question, then I'm happy to take on notice whether we've done that specific thing.
So what analysis is Treasury undertaking, and I'll ask Housing Australia the same question, about the relationship between wages and domestic house prices, residential house prices, because the question of affordability is critical in this current crisis. So I'm wondering what you're doing, what measures you're doing, what work you're doing on that, similarly in Housing Australia.
So, Senator, we'll have to take that on notice to make sure that we give you a precise answer to that question.
And Senator, we don't have a research and modelling function in Housing Australia as part of the investment mandate, so it is a policy matter that is for Treasury.
I thought it was, so that's where I directed the question. Thank you. If I can plough on. Thank you. I understand the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council is a statutory body. I'm not sure who this goes to. That provides independent evidence-based advice on matters affecting Australia's housing supply and affordability. It recommended to the federal government that, and I quote, all interactions between the tax and housing system should be reviewed to work towards fair access to the benefits of home ownership. And we also saw the Minister speak this week at the launch of Hal Pawson et al.'s new report, which is a fabulous resource for those of us.
A great book.
It's a great book. But it also has a lot to say about tax and sees tax as a really important part of the toolkit available to us in dealing with this very real crisis. Minister, does the government accept this recommendation, which has come from the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council and Australia's best academic researchers in the field of housing?
And what does the recommendation say again?
That we should be, I'll quote again, all interactions between the tax and housing systems should be reviewed to work towards fair access to the benefits of home ownership. And Hal Pawson's book in particular looks, for example, at negative gearing capital gains tax.
Well, Senator, we're focused on making sure, on one hand, that Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, and we're focused on delivering. Part of the equation here is an industrial relations question, really. That is, we want to see real wages increase for Australians. We're doing that through a series of mechanisms. We are focused on the Commonwealth Government making a contribution to increasing the supply of houses into the market, but also including a range of measures for affordable housing and social housing provision, and we're also, as we've just traversed, giving young people a fair shake by making sure that no matter what is said by some of the sort of commentators who don't have to worry about buying their own home, that people can get a 5% house deposit, many of them not having to pay lenders' mortgage insurance, and have lower repayments as a consequence. That's our approach. It's the approach we're sticking with.
And so you have rejected, listening to your answer to that recommendation from the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council. Are you undertaking any kind of review in view of their advice about the interactions between tax and housing as they recommend?
Well, we have got the job of work to do implementing the program that's in front of us, and that's what the government is focused on.
Senator, you're at time. I'm going to rotate the call.
No worries. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Walker.
Thank you. I've just got a few questions for Mr Rimmer. I note there's been a lot of commentary around what the average cost of a half home is. I think some of the public debate has been misleading about the cost of a home under half, suggesting it could be up to $1.3 million per home. Do you understand what this figure might be referring to? My understanding is that it is both the upfront cost and the ongoing cost over 25 years. I also understand it's not in today's dollars but includes indexation over 25 years. Is that accurate?
Senator, the design of HAF is that there's some upfront provision of funding of different forms by government and then a 25-year availability period. If you add together all of the availability payments over 25 years, it gives quite a misleading perspective on the effect of the total commitment of funds. The average total development cost for a home that's funded under HAF is around $690,000. These figures change from time to time depending on the contracts that Housing Australia has let at any given point in time. And to date, the average cost of the Commonwealth of the upfront commitment is around $170,000 when valued from today's perspectives. The ongoing cost over the 25 years comes to about $365,000 per home, again when valued from today's perspective. So when you add those together, the total cost of a half home is around $535,000 compared to the total development cost of the $690,000. Having made that comparison, I'm then going to say it's an unsafe comparison to make because the $690,000 figure is the cost of developing a home. The $535,000 figure is the cost of bringing a home into existence and then seeing it operate for 25 years. The maintenance costs across that period, and in the case of, HAF obviously is funding social and affordable housing, which is by definition below market rent provided to lower income Australians. So there's also a rental subsidy built into that cost. So the $535,000 is the combined cost of establishing a new home, maintaining that new home over 25 years, and ensuring that below market rental can be provided for that home over those 25 years. From a Treasury perspective, that reflects good value for money. Of course, we're always working on ways to ensure that HAF delivers even better value for money over time, and I know that's a big preoccupation of Housing Australia itself as well as Treasury. But that you're right, I think, Senator, in describing some of the commentary on this topic as misleading in that context.
Thank you. So upfront contribution from the Commonwealth is only $170,000 per home. Can you confirm that that is much smaller than the total development cost for a home?
Yes, Senator. The 170,000 on average relates to a total development cost of $690,000 on average. Obviously, individual projects will have different characteristics, but across half round 1 and 2, that's the average achieved so far.
How is the rest of the construction cost paid for, and how is the HAF able to leverage other contributions like from states and private industry?
So, Senator, in some projects, there is a co-contribution of land or financial support either from the housing provider or from a state government, or in some cases a third party may own some land that's relevant or whatever. So that's one contribution. The other contribution is the housing provider also frequently seeks debt financing for the project. In many cases, the debt financing is also provided by Housing Australia through the Australian Housing Bond, the Affordable Housing Bond Aggregator. In some cases, a housing provider might choose to go to an alternative source of finance. That's really up to them.
Would you agree that the HAF model is more cost effective because it leverages significant co-investment from states and other sources?
Yes, Senator, it's more cost effective for a number of reasons. One is it leverages the co-investment. The other is it spreads the cost of having the home in service over the 25-year period, so it reduces the upfront impact on the budget. And thirdly, it ensures that there are private sector finance is able to be provided to social and affordable housing development, either through the banking system or through the Affordable Housing Bond Aggregator, which sells bonds that are bought by a range of different providers in the financing world. So a range of private sector money is going into developing and maintaining social and affordable housing over that period of time.
So on the basis that the Commonwealth is only paying a small share of the cost of a home, is this cheaper to the taxpayer up front than if we were to just build the home directly and in full like public developers do in state systems?
Senator, it's definitely a more cost-effective mechanism to spread the payment over, or the payment for the housing provision over that period of time than to simply pay the capital cost up front. And in addition, it also means that the incentives are aligned. The availability payments don't start until the home is ready for occupation. And if for some reason the home is not able to be lived in, then availability payments also are treated in a different way at that time. So it makes sure that the housing provider is highly incentivised to get the home into the market as soon as possible and to keep it well maintained and in the market over that 25-year period.
Thank you. Mr Langford and Mr Rimmer, I would argue that you've got significantly more expertise in housing than anyone on this committee. I know you've both been working in housing for many years. Do you see the HAF as an efficient model for delivering social and affordable housing? And have you seen any models that are more efficient to the taxpayer?
Thank you, Senator. Look, the HAF is built on some innovations that have been trialled at state level in New South Wales in particular, the Social and Affordable Housing Fund, a very similar mechanism. It is a good model for delivering more homes up front. and it has real benefits. There are a range of different programs around the world that suggest that the importance is around continuity and certainty of program that goes to the ability to build up a pipeline and a market. And that's certainly what we've seen out of round 1 and 2 as the momentum is building and the market is coming to understand how to deliver and then to sustain those outcomes over the long term.
So 1 more minute.
And just off the back of that, Mr Langford, can you please explain the work Housing Australia has done to scale up the delivery of social and affordable housing? What improvements have you made to Housing Australia to help deliver this ambitious agenda of the government?
Well, thank you, Senator. So the mandate of Housing Australia as set by government has expanded to include new functions over the last several years, and we have been building the infrastructure to execute that mandate. That's included adding additional staff and adding additional capability. It's also been building the right guardrails because we are deploying a significant investment over a very long period of time on behalf of the Commonwealth. And so that's necessitated the build-up of a range of different systems and processes, which now means that as we've moved through the first 2 rounds of the HAF and the NAF, we have started to see some momentum and get to a position of comfort that we have got the right risk settings in place that's enabling us to move to deploy that capital with more confidence.
Thank you.
Senator Canavan.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Look, just I wanted to, before when I was asking questions, I was going to try and get to the issue of prudential risk. Has there been any modelling on whether this the rollout of this scheme increases prudential risk to the financial system?
Could I just confirm which program?
Oh, the 5% scheme. Sorry, what I was asking about before, but yeah, the 5% scheme. Sorry.
So there is, we in Treasury have undertaken a consultation with industry at the request of government, where we consulted with industry as part of those consultations, and I think on a regular ongoing basis we also consult with APRA around changes. I think that assessment though on changes to prudential risk would be a matter for APRA to advise on.
I suppose where I'm getting to is, like, were there any scenarios looked at to say that if there had been a certain decrease in power prices, got that net zero stuff in my head, in property prices, would that lead? I was talking about the potential for defaults and those things before. What sort of risk would there be to the overall system with this scheme having, 10% of new loans or so? We think, we don't have an exact number. Does that increase risk of a cycle if there is a decrease in property prices?
So I can't speak to the scenarios that APRA looks.
No, I'm talking
at,
about them.
But I'm
asking about the modelling that's been done on the 5% scheme, which I think.
Yeah. So I can talk to some of the arrangements we have in Treasury, and I think Scott may have some comments about Housing Australia and their work. So we work with the Australian Government Actuary to model the anticipated liabilities from that scheme over the medium term. And we obviously do our best to forecast for government the liabilities over the forward estimates, so that can be published along at each budget update.
I'll just come back to my question. It's a pretty simple question. Has there been any modelling done, or scenario analysis, risk analysis of if there is a certain reduction in property prices, what does that mean for the interaction between the 5% scheme and the level of prudential risk in the system?
I would need to take that detail on notice.
It doesn't sound like there has been.
We'll take that question on notice, but I think the underlying premise, banks under the 5% deposit scheme are still required to undertake the normal responsible lending arrangements. They're still required to assess capacity to pay. They're required to consider fully the customer's circumstances before they enter into a lending agreement. in exactly the same way that they would without the 5% deposit scheme. All that the 5% deposit scheme does is mean that that 15%, or in some cases 18%, is guaranteed by government. So if there is a risk in the system, and we estimate it to be a very modest risk, the risk is to the government in having to pay out on the guarantee in some cases. The experience to date has been that the number of cases which have triggered the guarantee has been, I literally mean this, vanishingly small. So the...
Yes, but that's in the context of a rising property market. I mean,
sure.
I
accept the premise of your
so
question.
I'm talking about a negative economic shock.
Senator, if it's helpful, my colleague, Ms Jarman,
sure.
can talk through the stress testing process that is undertaken from a Housing Australia perspective. While she's just finding a place at the table, Ms Jarman, you can talk through the stress testing process, and perhaps also useful to give the Senator some context around the hardship and arrears rates if you've got that data available.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. So Housing in Australia also conducts some independent stress testing on the portfolio for the purpose purely of operationalising readiness to pay and claims, which is our role under the mandate. So in the there's a number of scenarios that are stress tested, a base case scenario, a GFC-like crash, a housing market crash, and a cost of living and unemployment crisis scenario.
Right, okay, this is where I'm getting at. Okay, good. Okay, go for it, yep.
Yes, so under those different scenarios, we have an estimate of the number of claims that may come through for the financial year period, so that we can then work out operationally that we are ready, should those claims come through, to be able to pay them.
But when you say ready, you mean you're operationally ready?
Correct.
But what I suppose I'm asking, and I'm glad you did look at, say, a GFC-style crash. I mean, we hope it doesn't happen, but obviously these things can happen, and I definitely don't accept we should rely on the fact that, well, it hasn't happened so far, so it's not going to happen, because they're rare and always unexpected events. So when doing that scenario analysis, have you then assessed, taken the next steps, if there is a GFC crash, what does that mean for the overall prudential health of the financial system? Or is it just on the operational ability of you to make the payments?
Yeah.
Senator, within Housing Australia's remit, we're using that data just for the implementation of our functions. I think...
but has Treasury done? I'm not expecting Housing Australia to do the broader prudential. Has Treasury, are you Treasury? Or okay.
I think officials might correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, they have to, for the purposes of having systems in place.
Yeah.
Your question, I think, is more a question for the sort of macro group in terms of the
macroeconomic risk.
I think so.
Is the 5% deposit scheme the team you've, and just excuse me,
they're
you're
operational,
Treasury?
I'm Housing Australia.
Oh, you're Housing Australia?
Yeah.
Your Treasury, Dr. Hunter?
Treasury has policy responsibility for the 5% policy scheme within the housing group. As the Minister said, the macroeconomic group is responsible for whole of economy macroeconomic modelling. Other parts of Treasury are responsible for engaging with the financial sector and APRA about macroprudential risks. Housing Australia implements the scheme.
So I'll get to the chase where I'm going here. I mean, I'm just a bit concerned for some of the answers that it sounds to me, if we were in the US Congress in 2006, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would be saying, look, Senator, the default risk is really low. We hardly have anybody defaulting on these loans we're guaranteeing. And then 2 years later, we all know what happened. So that's what I'm getting at. Like, who is looking at this, that whether or not these schemes potentially add to a GFC type risk that we saw in the US and North America. And you can all sit here and say, oh, the banks have their systems, and they look at people. Well, I'm sure they had those in North America too.
I would have thought, and again, I think it's a question that Treasury Macro will be able to answer perhaps better than me, but not. I don't think it's for these officials. But I would have thought the answer is our prudential regulation framework applies to the banks who issue the loans, whether or not they're issuing a 5% loan under this scheme or a 20% deposit loan. Like, they must make that assessment. And Australia has one of our strengths is a more stringent regulatory approach on those questions.
Just wouldn't want to rely on it, that's all. We're better than everyone else.
On those questions, and there has been no relaxation of lending standards. And the experience of operating the scheme, to the extent that officials here can answer it, is that the default rate is vanishingly small. That accords with, my experience. That is, working class people and low income people who have the means to pay it are very disciplined about paying on time, sometimes more disciplined than other sections of the community. There is a snobbery in some circles about the capacity of low-income people to do it. That is not the experience. It's not the experience of microfinancing schemes in other jurisdictions as well. That's my broader experience, irrelevant here perhaps, but the bottom line is that lending standards are not relaxed. The government is playing a role here sitting behind the banks. That is lowering the costs for people in terms of the deposit that is required, so shaves 9 or 10 years for many people off their capacity, off their time that they would expect to have to save, and lowers their LMI costs. It's pretty hard to argue against that.
Can I go to a sort of more technical aspect of this then? Okay, all right. We'll put this in your head. You can stew over it. I'll come back to it if I get time. The sort of basis of all this line of questioning is that, in my view, is, and I'm not saying it's pejoratively, but my assessment here is that there is a moral hazard risk by doing this program. That now we have a situation going forward where neither the banks nor the customer, so neither side of the transaction here, are bearing the costs of the risk of default. In a traditional LMI situation, the mortgage holder pays for those risks. They're facing those risks. They've got to assess whether it's worth paying for the LMI to provide the insurance to the bank. We're now paying that effectively, the LMI, we're paying that for them. So you're introducing moral hazard. And we can all say that there's standards in place, and yes, people, of course, not go into loans thinking they can't repay. But we know many, many times, again and again, when governments do this and introduce moral hazard, it does have perverse outcomes. So my fundamental question, maybe we can come back to it, is how has the government designed this scheme with guardrails in place to minimise that moral hazard risk?
Well, the guardrails are the prudential requirements that apply to the banks. The government is standing behind this, backing ordinary people, decent Australians who otherwise would have to wait for a decade before they got home ownership. It is not, it is not anything but us leaning in to support ordinary people having a fair crack at it. That's it. Prudential requirements are the same.
But I'd like to know, did the officials provide advice around this issue of moral hazard risk? Is that something you assessed and said, okay, we think we need to design a scheme this or this way, maybe strengthen the prudential standards, because it sounds like we're relying on what was there before, even though I would posit that we are introducing an additional risk here.
Senator, I'm happy to take on notice your question and look more widely across the Treasury, because it does cross a number of different groups. I think I would, with respect, say that the characterisation that you've given misses a very important point, which is a default that gets to this point, that's gone through the hardship provisions of individual lenders, is not in any way an experience that's going to be enjoyable for the customer concerned. So it's not the case that the customer gets out of a default situation cost-free. This is a situation that would be deeply traumatic.
That would be the same in the US? Would it be the same in Europe in terms of what happened there?
All I can comment on is the design of this scheme, Senator. The customer is heavily, the bank's customer is heavily incentivised to avoid default.
I'm going to rotate the call now. Senator Bragg.
Thanks. We have a lot of questions for Housing Australia, but I just have a couple of quick ones for Treasury. So the Minister said back in August that the Housing Australia website was slowing down because there were too many people trying to get in touch with it. Is that true?
Senator, I that you would direct that question to Treasury, but I might jump in if that's okay. I think you're referring to some reporting that happened at the time of the 5% deposit scheme.
I can read it out for you so it's in the Hansard record forevermore, and future historians will reflect on this moment in time.
Will be widely read.
The Minister said, in fact, there's so much interest that it's slowing down the Housing Australia website, ! Please hold on while they resolve the issue ASAP. There you go. It's up there with the Dead Sea Scrolls and a few other things. What do you think? What happened?
So, Senator, there was an issue on the morning of the expansion when we rolled out the new lending criteria.
Right.
There was a significant inflow of traffic, and it required a technical resolution, which is beyond my ability to describe. But I understand effectively we upgraded the bandwidth or the ability for people to visit the website, and that resolved it same day.
It's remarkable that so many people can contact the government's housing fund website, but apparently this is the same program which hasn't had any impact on price. Extraordinary. Well, what a country!
We've given evidence about the estimates of volumes, but obviously there were a range of people in the community that were interested in the program.
I'm glad the website's fixed. Okay, now just Treasury, with this report, so how are you going with supplying the Senate with the governance report we discussed last time?
Senator, there's an IPD, I can't remember the exact number, my colleagues might help me on that matter.
Sure.
That's currently with ministers to contemplate how best they wish to answer.
Okay, so you've given the report to the Minister?
Senator, we've given a response to the IPD to the Minister.
Sorry, you just said that it's with the Minister to decide how to respond.
The response to the IPD is with the Minister.
So has the Minister seen the report?
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice.
Okay, what about the Minister's office?
Actually, just refreshing my memory, I believe the Minister has been provided with a copy of the report.
Okay. And who provided the Minister with the briefing, verbal or written?
There was a written brief.
Okay, what did the brief say?
I don't have it with me, Senator.
Okay, but what was the broad thrust of it?
I'll have to take that on notice.
Can't remember?
I can't remember to that level of precision.
It was a $24,000 report into the governance of Housing Australia.
Yes, Senator.
This is the order for production of documents that was issued last week, isn't it?
We also asked about last estimates when they were here.
But
it's the same thing.
The order for production of documents was last week's exercise.
It's the same.
And the timetable for return of questions on notice for estimates, I don't think it's concluded yet.
I'm just asking him if he has any updates on.
I was interested. I mean, it did cause me, in considering this question, to consider whether.
It's very hard to get documents out of your government.
Whether if you put it on notice again, whether the clock started running again, but I haven't given that moment.
Well, we'll come back to that.
I'm very interested in people's views about that.
Okay. Well, look, let me ask you about let me ask Housing Australia then. So, Ms. Armour, have you seen this report?
No, this is I assume you're talking about the report that has been referenced in the press, where there was a matter raised relating to the chair.
That's right.
A number of years ago, and in accordance with good practice, the Treasury looked into that. I assume that's what you're talking about.
Have you been provided with the report?
I haven't been provided with that report.
I mean, the Financial Review today has a story saying that the Housing Australia chair tried to write own minutes. So I imagine that the board has had some discussion about these governance issues.
So I'm not quite sure what you mean by governance issues.
Would you like me to rephrase the question?
If you could, because I'm not sure there are governance issues.
So the evidence we received at the last estimates was that the Treasury told this committee that there was a report done by an organisation which cost $24,000. We've now heard it's been provided to the Minister or their office in some form, and it was to do with broadly speaking, the governance and conduct of the organisation
So my understanding was there was a review done in response to an issue raised by a former staff member, and that review concluded that there were no breaches of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so has the board discussed these issues?
We're aware that there was that review.
Okay. So have you been provided with a summary of the report's findings as a director?
I have not seen this report.
Okay. I'm not asking you if you've seen the report. I'm asking now, were you provided with a summary of its findings? We were
informed that there was a conclusion that there was no breach of the Code of Conduct.
Who informed you?
A officer from Treasury.
Yeah, who was that?
A lady called Roxanne Kelly.
Roxanne Kelly, who is the head of the...
Ms Kelly was the Deputy Secretary Corporate at the relevant time.
She's still there?
She's no longer with Treasury, Senator.
Okay, so she was the Deputy Sec for Corporate?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so Ms Kelly came and briefed the board?
She told the board, yes.
Okay, and so Ms Kelly told the board about the contents of the report and its findings?
She told us...
It's not a trick question.
No, I know, but you have to appreciate we were not involved in the establishment of the review. We were not involved in the work that was done by Treasury. We weren't involved.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking you, the reason I'm asking the director of the organisation or one of the board members is because clearly, like, according to the published reports and the evidence from the last estimates, there appear to be some problems about the culture. There are at least allegations that there are problems with culture in the organisation. So I guess what I'm asking you is the board, does the board have concerns about the organisation's culture?
I believe the board is continually monitoring the culture of the organisation and is absolutely invested and committed to the success of the organisation, and it's very concerned at all times to not only deliver the projects but for the staff to be enjoying and feeling satisfied with their working place.
Okay, I mean, you're a very, very experienced person. Do you receive reports about things like staff turnover and staff satisfaction?
We do receive those reports, yes.
Okay, and have you been briefed on staff turnover?
Yes, we have.
And how is that looking in the last year?
I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but there has been some staff turnover in the last year because we've had a restructure. We have a new CEO who joined us about a year ago, and as part of the change program at Housing Australia to position the organisation well for all the new responsibilities, that we've had a restructure.
So maybe I should ask Mr Langford some questions about staffing then. How many staff have left in the last year?
So, Senator, I've got the figure at the end of August 2025. The total turnover was 26.07%. That was based on an average headcount of
26%?
Yes, Senator.
Of the staff left?
That includes, so it was 41 employees who left the organisation. That included 8 redundancies, 3 terminations, and sadly 1 employee who passed away. And 29 employees who left voluntarily.
Okay. And how many bullying complaints have been made inside Housing Australia in the last year?
Senator, I might ask my colleague Ms Braid because I think she's got that information in her pack.
But thanks.
Senator Brack, you're at 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, so I've got heaps more. So, yeah. So do you want me to stop? Or keep going on this line?
Why don't we go to Senator Pocock and then come back to you? Is that okay? Just so we keep it 10 and 10.
Well, should I finish his last question or not?
Yeah, if you've got one more.
All right, well, I think the question was how many bullying complaints were made inside Housing Australia in the past 12 months?
Senator, I'm aware that there have been 3 grievances lodged with people and culture in the past 12 months. They don't necessarily relate to bullying, they relate to matters of conduct in the organisation.
Okay, I think I'm at my time, so I'll have more for you, but I'll...
Senator Pocock. We've all got lots, haven't we? Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to pursue something that I was thinking about listening to you, Senator Walker's questioning, and it goes to the way in which HAF is funded relative to direct spends. I wanted to ask how many houses funded by the HAF will remain social and affordable in perpetuity. The availability payment is for 25 years, right? At that moment, certain things happen. Either they're available in perpetuity or they become the property of the facility that's running them. So that's my question. How many?
Senator, I'm just going to see if I have that information for you in the pack.
Okay.
While I'm looking for that, I'll just make the point that the investment mandate is to fund housing for the 25-year term of HAF, so we don't prescribe what happens to those properties.
Yeah, but my question's valid, so thank you for the answer. I wanted to go to the returns on the HAF investment and drawdowns on the fund to finance the HAF in the last year or two. I'm looking at the latest quarterly report from the Future Fund Board, released on the 3rd of November. The total value of the HAF by that time was $11.2 billion, 30th of September. I'm looking at the asset allocation in Table 12. Have I got that right? $11.2 billion.
So that sounds about right. I have a slightly older figure. The HAF and the investment, of course, is managed by the Department of Finance.
So I assume this table of assets does not include the $500 million that's been dispersed through rounds 1 and 2 in 24-25. Is that a fair assumption?
So I would need to take that on notice. I don't have the document that you're referring to before me, but we are certainly able to consult with our colleagues.
Thank you. So my question is, does that mean the HAF has appreciated in value by $1.7 billion since the original $10 billion capital investment? I hope you can see my reasoning. $500 million has gone out. It looks like the asset is now sitting at $11.2 billion. So it looks like there is $1.7 billion potentially.
So we don't have figures in those terms, but we're very happy to give you the figures that we have in our briefing. So I'll hand over to Mr. Cook.
Thank you. So my question is, does this mean the HAF has only dispersed 30% of the money it's made over that period, and the other 70%, $1.2 billion, is being banked, not being used to build housing?
Brendan Cook, Acting Assistant Secretary, Housing Finance and Delivery Branch. I can confirm that the HAF made a disbursement of $500 million in the last financial year. I can also confirm that the total balance of the HAF is currently higher than the $10 billion principal that was deposited. From my advice...
We can be more precise than that, can't you, Mr Cook?
Yes,
which $11.2 billion.
I can turn to, which my advice may be different to the advice you have in front of you, which I think has a different date. So the balance of the HAF was approximately $10.9 billion at 30 June 2025. The HAF has returned 10% per annum return in the year to 30 June 2025, which is above the target rate for the fund of 4.1%.
I'm looking at a more recent set of figures than that. Shouldn't housing, my question is, Minister, and it might be relevant for your thoughts, shouldn't Housing Australia be allocating more of this money, this considerable growth in the value of the fund, to build social and affordable housing, taking advantage of that growth? What's the point of that money if we're not spending it in the middle of a housing crisis, Minister?
Well, the fund is designed to perform its function over the long term. Its commencement was delayed, of course, through the Parliament. So it works its way through its investment and allocation strategy, and it is designed to achieve those public policy objectives over time. And that means that some years will perform differently to others. It has to make good judgments over time, and we'll see how that develops.
Kind of a rainy day, though, isn't it? Like, it's a crisis out there. Why wouldn't we try and boost as much as we can right now? I
think the figure is $44 billion, I think, from memory, the government's accumulated contribution across all of the different schemes. It would be very hard to argue, I'm sure the team will correct me if I'm wrong, might be bigger than that. It is an extraordinarily substantial commitment from a Commonwealth government, unprecedented. Overall, across all of our housing measures, across the whole
43 billion over
measures.
25 years.
Some are designed to achieve slightly different objectives because, you can't do one thing. Providing more housing more housing supply is a good thing. I've just been corrected, $43 billion, Senator. I was exaggerating. My father told me, I've told you a million times not to exaggerate. It's a very substantial scheme. Different elements will operate in different ways. They operate over time.
So can I go to, I'll try and squeeze a couple of things in, time is short. Thank you for that answer. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council has said that based on the current pace of housing construction, the government would fall some 262,000 homes short of the 1.2 million target under the Housing Accord. What's Treasury's estimate of the shortfall of houses at the moment, what that the shortfall will be by June 2029?
Senator, the Treasury's estimates are the Council's estimates. We don't separately model those figures, but if you don't mind, I might just say you've positioned that as the government's target.
The target of the Housing Accord.
The target of the Housing Accord, which is a target of all 9 Australian governments.
Yes.
Plus local government, without repeating myself.
No, I get. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you. But you don't have a separate estimate about what the long-term shortfall might be? Treasury's not looking.
No, Senator.
You rely on...
We rely on the Council.
Do you have any estimates of how many of the 1.2 or 1 million or whatever we land on constructed under the Accord will go to first home buyers or owner-occupiers?
Not with us here today, Senator.
Could you take that on notice? Thank you. And similarly, how many of the 1.2 million will be affordable community and or public housing?
We can look into that, Senator.
Thank you very much. I'd appreciate that. I'm zooming through things here. If I can come to the third round of the HAF, under the current investment mandate direction, entities can bid for funding under the HAF via the special purpose vehicles, SPVs, I understand,
Yes, that's right, Senator.
which must include at least one member from the categories of community housing providers, charitable entities, or to be part of a special purpose vehicle. Have I understood that?
I don't have the exact words in front of me. Mr. Langford might be able to help.
But I understand, so I just want to get to my...
That's correct, Senator.
Thank you. But these SPVs can also include private sector financiers and or developers. Is that right?
Well, Senator, the only requirement set out in the investment mandate is that at least one of its members is an entity mentioned in the preceding paragraphs, which is the types of entities you've just outlined in terms of being a community housing provider, state government entity or another charity.
So have any special purpose vehicles received any money under rounds 1 and 2?
Senator, I will ask my colleague Ms Harris to come to the table just to answer that. I think the answer is probably yes, but I just want to be very clear because there are some entities that have been created that have registered as community housing providers, and so the classification of that then becomes a matter that we would suggest is that they are eligible in their own right because they've registered into the system.
Okay, so my question is how many, have any received any money in those rounds 1 and 2? And what's going on in round 3 in terms of SPVs? Have you kept the same arrangements? So
perhaps while Ms Harris just looks and see if we've got the data on the SPVs, what I can say, Senator, is that in relation to round 3, we're providing input to our colleagues at Treasury who are leading the policy development for round 3. If there are to be any consideration, it'll be a decision of government around the investment mandate we're given for round 3.
Announcement of round 3 and the terms of the investment mandate as they relate to round 3 are a matter for government, Senator.
Can I ask you whether you see any lessons out of round 1 and 2 around the treatment of SPVs?
Senator, I'm sorry to be difficult, but you're asking for an opinion.
I understand it's a policy question. Thank you.
You're at 9 minutes.
Preeta Harris, Chief Investment Officer, Housing Australia. Thank you for your question, Senator. Commitments have been made to SPVs, as you describe. However, I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but I can take that question on notice for you.
Thank you. I would be curious about how many such arrangements exist and the quantum of the allocations to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Bragg.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So I think I was just asking the Head of Human Resources some questions.
I think, Senator, you're referring to Ms Braid as the Chief Operating Officer?
Ms Braid, sorry. COO? Yes. Okay, so you had 3 formal complaints?
In the last 12 months, yes.
Yeah. And were any of those made to Fair Work?
We've had 3 matters referred to the Fair Work Commission in the past 12 months. 2 of those matters were resolved at the first conciliation hearing, and the 3rd matter was withdrawn by the applicant.
How many of them resulted in payouts?
I'd need to take that question on notice.
You don't know?
I would not like to give information to the committee that may identify the applicant or in any way compromise confidentiality.
That's why I'm not asking about that. I'm asking if any of them resulted in payouts.
It may be the case.
It's because the number's small, Senator, there is a risk of identification. I think the official is entitled to take that on notice on that basis.
What about workers' comp?
So we currently have 4 active workers' compensation claims.
Okay, any of them in relation to bullying?
The way that workers' compensation claims work is an employee can see a medical professional and be assessed, and if the medical professional believes that a workplace injury has been sustained, a claim can be made to Comcare. And the statement that goes along with that is the employee's subjective experience related to the injury. So the nature of those claims varies.
But are any of them in relation to bullying matters?
The nature of the claims varies.
Sorry, that's not a complete answer. I'm just wondering whether bullying has been raised in any of these particular cases. It's a binary thing. It's a yes or no.
Senator, some matters raised in the claims relate to interpersonal relationships in the workplace.
Okay. And so you said 6?
There are 4 active workers' compensation claims.
And that's in addition to the 3 that went to Fair Work?
There is some crossover.
There is some crossover. Okay, fine, fair enough. And do these involve the board members, or these are all staff and staffing issues?
Yes, staffing-related matters.
There's no relationship to any director?
No.
Okay. And what about but none of the workers' comp cases have been resolved yet or concluded?
They are active claims.
But concluded or still ongoing?
Concluded would mean that the employee is back in the workplace. These are active claims. The employees are currently on workers' compensation.
They're on workers' comp, okay. So that's 4 people on workers' comp at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. What sort of timetable do you think applies?
That will depend on the nature of the injury and the length of time it takes to rehabilitate.
Okay, but are they physical and mental injuries?
Senator, I'd like to take advice on what information I can give to the committee.
Advice on that. Okay, how much are you spending on lawyers' fees?
Senator, are you talking about the total legal
For the
expenditure?
last year, yeah.
Ms Braid, do you have the operating budget for last year in terms of the total legal expenditure?
So in 2025, our total legal expenses were $2.5 million.
And how does that compare to prior years?
In 2024, our legal fees were $3.4 million.
Okay. What about recruitment fees?
In 2025, our recruitment services were $2 million. I believe that also included short-term contractors.
Okay. And what about professional services firms? Do you have any of those on retainer, or any of the professional services firms doing work for Housing Australia?
By that, do you mean management consultant, Senator?
Ernst & Young, those sort of people.
So, Senator, we do have a range of engagements, and a number of those are disclosed through I think what's referred to broadly as the Murray motion in terms of the engagements, but we have some detail we can share with you.
So what have you got? Who's doing consulting work for you now?
14 million in 24, 23, 24. EY 6 million.
That was for consultants and contractors, yes.
No, it's 13 million, you told us last time, sorry. I asked the question, sorry, I don't want to butt in, but I did ask for on notice the full breakdown of your spend on consultants, and as I recollect, it was $30 million on external consulting, of which 14 million was for consultants in particular, and top of the list from memory was 6 million for EY. I have questions on it myself, so I think...
Yes. Well, Senator, in 24-25, Housing Australia spent $7.1 million on consultants and $6.9 million on contractors. We also had other expenses related to legal and IT.
Okay. What's KPMG doing for you?
I believe KPMG was engaged as our external auditor, but has now completed that contract.
That's it.
Check it for
I believe they may be providing us with some accounting advice on one of our programs.
Accounting advice?
Mm-hmm.
To do with the audit? Or non-audit work?
The appropriate financial treatment.
So
in our accounts.
I believe, Senator, as part of the audit engagement, they were asked about the accounting, an accounting matter, but we can take that on notice.
They weren't conflicted out as the external auditor?
So they're no longer our external auditor is the ANAO, and KPMG were assisting the ANAO in that work. They are no longer, their contract with the ANAO has ended, and there is another firm that is assisting the ANAO with our external audit, so KPMG are not conflicted out.
Okay. So speaking of the ANAO, they're doing a performance audit of the organisation, and they're looking at some of the stuff with Treasury.
No, I don't believe that's correct.
That's not correct, Senator. The ANAO are doing a performance audit of the Housing Australia Future Fund, not of Housing Australia.
And who's engaging with ANAO on that front?
Sorry, Senator?
From Housing Australia. Who does that?
Well, Senator, at this stage, the ANAO haven't engaged with us. It's, as Mr Rimmer said, as I understand it, the ANAO is doing an audit of the Housing Australia Future Fund.
They talk to the HAF.
So it would be a matter that Treasury would be leading on.
This is you.
I'm sure, Senator, that the ANAO are likely to engage with Housing Australia at some point during the audit process. The audit commenced, I believe Mr Cook may help me, a few weeks ago. There's been some preliminary requests for documents. This is all part of the normal ANAO forward work program.
Very good. It's very important that the auditor is able to do its work, given that we can't get anything out of the Parliament or FOI. Okay, now what's Mercer doing for you?
Mercer was engaged to undertake a benchmarking study to review Housing Australia's remuneration against other industry sectors.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk to you about who does FOI? Where does that sit?
that sits in my remit.
Is that your remit, is it? Okay. So, are you aware of an FOI I have with you in relation to presentations that you exchanged with the super fund called Hester? Do you know about that one?
I'm familiar with the request, Senator.
Yeah, I have a vague recollection of seeing that FOI, but Ms Braid, do you have any specifics?
So effectively, there was a bunch of emails and meetings back in 22 and 23 between Housing Australia and Hester, and effectively it looks like you provided presentations and they provided documents to you. Do you know what this is all about? Because the documents that we've been given from you are all redacted and black. They're completely blacked out, so we can't actually see any of the material. So what were those meetings all about?
Senator, neither Ms Braid or I were engaged at Housing Australia at the time, but what I can say is that the institutional investment is very clearly a policy and program direction that's been set out. It's a legislated objective for Housing Australia to encourage investment in housing, particularly in social affordable. It's set as an objective in the investment mandate. It's also set out in the Housing Accord implementation schedule from the Commonwealth that specifically provides that the Commonwealth will provide availability payments and other innovative financing techniques through the Housing Australia Future Fund, and that will seek to facilitate superannuation and institutional capital investment in social and affordable housing alongside established state and territory programs.
I understand, but like, what could be so secret that there are literally pages and pages of blacked out material in these documents? I'm just wondering, what's the basis upon which almost all the correspondence between Hester and Housing Australia is being redacted?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the matter and I'm not familiar with the materials, but I imagine the decision, the FOI decision, would have set out the reasons.
Well, you've been fighting this for years. I mean, it's before the Information Commissioner. So what's the story? What's so secret?
Senator, as Mr Langford mentioned, neither of us were with Housing Australia at the time. Well, I certainly wasn't in this role at the time that the decision was made. We will take that on notice.
Senator Bragg, I'm going to have to rotate the call, but happy to.
Can I ask one more then?
Yeah,
sure. So with the HAF tender, where this company called Assemble, do you know about Assemble?
I'm familiar with them, Senator.
Yeah. So their total amount they stand to receive in some form is $2.2 billion. So this organisation is owned by Hester. They own half of it. So do you think it's a good idea to black out all these FOIs and not show people what was going on back then? Because, like, I might not be very clever, but I would have thought that if the biggest beneficiary of your funding stream has been engaging with you for many years and you're not providing the information about what you're engaging with, it doesn't look very good. So I guess I ask again, what is the driver, or what is the explanation you can provide for blacking out so much information, which should only really be an orderly... I mean, what could you be talking to them about that's so secret?
Well, Senator, I'm not going to comment on the document because I'm not familiar with it, and nor am I familiar with the specific FOI decision, which it sounds like you were taking the appropriate channel to contest.
It's not. I just don't think it's reasonable. Sorry, Chair, but like, if you appeal an FOI to the Information Commission, it can take years and years to get a response. Okay, so I think it'd be much better if you could look at this now you're here and then take it on notice and see whether you can unredact it all. Because if your board's decided to give these people billions of dollars and you're not going to show us what correspondence and what interaction you had, even though we know that there's reams and reams and reams of it, I think you should, rather than drag out the Information Commissioner's process, I think you should come back and provide an answer to the Senate before the next estimates. Can you do that?
As I understand it, I mean, I've just listened to the exchange. These are FOI requests. There would be arrangements and negotiations between the organisation and financial institutions all the time, revealing the contents of some contents of those negotiations would put competitors of there are commercial and confidence issues here, I assume. Well, what you don't want to do is put by releasing. I'm all for releasing information into the public that it's possible to do, but it is responsible to protect the Commonwealth's commercial interest here, and to not undermine it.
But all you're doing is giving money away.
And if the financial arrangements with Party A are revealed publicly, it puts parties B, C, and D at a commercial advantage because they know what the character of those negotiations is. Now, I know that you don't believe that the Commonwealth should be engaged in private activity. We've made a decision that we're going to have a public institution leaning into markets that have not supported young people in particular, ordinary Australians, to get a home. Like that is, I understand the ideological.
I've told you before, no one's ordinary.
Well,
it's very mean thing to say.
I suppose I take a different.
You know better than that.
I suppose I take a different view of the word ordinary, Senator Bragg, and I revel in my ordinariness. And as I said to you before, some people are more ordinary than others. There's a lot of literature on this. Actually, it's ordinariness is a very admirable trait, and I hope that I share it with many other ordinary Australians, and I want them to have the same opportunities that I do, and I don't want the commercial activity of the state that is engaged here to back people with less bargaining power and less capacity to be able to get a home.
But you don't even know what's in the documents. Do you know what's in these documents?
Well, I don't read I'm not a fixated person who gets excited by engagements between public institutions and superannuation organisations. It doesn't trouble me.
We're not going to get these documents.
It doesn't trouble me.
I think the chair's keen to rotate the call.
It's entirely appropriate.
I will. I'm going to go to Senator Walker and then I'll go to Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. I've only got a few questions, so I'll try and make it quick noting. I know everyone else has got quite a few questions. Just before I start, Ms Armour, it's great to read through your opening statement noting some of the progress that's been made so far. There has been some commentary suggesting that the HAF is only purchasing existing homes. Can you clarify there is not a single home under the HAF that involves an acquisition of an existing completed home on the private market?
I'll let Mr. Langford.
Thank you, Senator. So the HAF does not acquire homes. Mm-hmm. The program provides funding to eligible funding recipients like community housing providers who can develop homes in their own right, or they can contract with a developer for a new home at various points in development cycles, such as pre-commencement or during construction. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Could you explain what's meant by turnkey acquisition in the community housing sector and how that fits into the broader delivery approach under the HAF?
Thank you, Senator. So turnkey would be a term that's commonly used in the community housing and the development sector. It refers to a strategy for the provision of a home where a community housing provider contracts with a developer at various points in the development cycle, but if that's occurring in the early stages, it may be, for example, where they're then able to provide specifications to the developer appropriate to the social and affordable housing they want to provide, and then the developer takes risk to deliver that product and the community housing provider makes a payment on completion. So colloquially referred to as turnkey, a turnkey acquisition where you are contracting with the developer, and then that property becomes available when the community housing provider completes the purchase.
And what proportion of turnkey acquisitions make up the half?
Sorry, Senator, I'm just going to look for that answer in my pack. Senator, of the homes that have been completed to date, there are 556 where development's been undertaken by the applicant, and there are 333 that have been delivered by industry. So that may well be what you refer to as turnkey.
Thank you. And my last question, can you provide examples of where homes are completed under half rounds 1 and 2, and talk a little bit about the impact that these projects are having on the local communities?
Thank you, Senator. Look, of the 889 homes that have been completed, that's as of 4th of November, I'll give you an example of a project by Anglicare in South Australia in Panorama. It's enabled 18 homes to be made available for affordable rental. I recently saw a quote from one of the tenants in there who sort of talked about the impact of that and encourage more of the same, so that people in her community can have the security of knowing they've got a roof over their head at a rent they can afford to pay. Another project that I can talk about is one that I was involved with actually in a prior role, and for the avoidance of doubt, we had all of the conflicts management in place when I crossed the jumped the fence from the community housing sector to join Housing Australia. But it's a project that St George Community Housing has partnered with Conscious Investment Management, and they have a turnkey arrangement in place for 102 affordable homes in Box Hill. These newly constructed homes are now providing outcomes for tenants, and they shared a story with me recently, some of my former colleagues, about a tenant called Fiona, who was telling stakeholders at an event celebrating the handover of those homes about the fact that it was making a very significant difference in her life. For the first time in her life, she'd been given a notice to vacate in private rental, had felt very uncertain about what her future would hold, had been going through a series of life challenges, and with the security of an affordable home, she's been able to secure employment working for 000 in Victoria. So she feels more confident to be engaged and is now providing a really essential service to the people of Victoria. So they're the sort of projects, Senator, that we're seeing.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to go back to the budget on consulting and the operating budget. Ms Braid, you gave us a corrected figure, last estimates of the operating cost of 59 point something was the operating cost, and I may have been wrong, but my staff looked at the contracts that are going external to Housing Australia, and I got to a figure of 30 million. 4.8 million on IT, 6.3 million on legal, 14.5 million on consultants. And I asked on notice to get a detailed list of all of that. So I look forward to that. But that's a big spend on consultants and external people for a small operating budget, given all of our interest in making sure we get value for money and deal and build the public sector. I know that you are doing that with your growth in employment, but it is incredibly important. But I wanted to particularly ask about the contract with EY. It's $6,234,665 over a 2-year, maybe it's 3-year period, from the 30th of October 23 to the 30th of November 25. So a 2-year period, $6 million for advisory services. What is that for?
Ms Braid will just find the detail out, you, Senator, but while she's doing that, what I can say is that EY were engaged as commercial advisors and to provide resources during the establishment of the first round of the HAF. Ms Braid, have you got the scope of their engagement? Can you talk to some more of the detail of that?
Yes, Senator. So I can see that EY has been engaged over a series of consecutive years. In 2023, my apologies, in 2025, Ernst & Young was involved in HAF Round 1 evaluation and negotiation activities, contract management services. It provided GSD advisory and HAF capacity assessments.
So you've got EY out there doing negotiations. Is that correct?
So, Senator, the model that we established with EY in round 1, or I should say was established prior to my time, but we've continued through the end of round 1 of the HAF, was that they were providing a range of services and support. Housing Australia staff were leading the negotiations, and where there was interaction with applicants, Housing Australia staff were most commonly interacting with applicants, but EY were providing advice on the negotiations, and particularly around the assurance of information provided, because there was a volume of information we'd asked applicants to provide in the returns that they had to make to then complete the documentation that would lead to a contract, or what we call a framework funding agreement. There would need to be validation of that information, and EY provided a range of services to support that.
So EY have a very large client base. How did you manage a conflict of interest?
Senator, I'm aware that there were protocols established, but that it pre-existed me, and I don't have that detail just to mind. If Ms Braid doesn't have the conflict...
I would like assurance that you have managed conflict of interest in relation to EY,
absolutely.
because I have very serious concerns this Senate holds in relation to EY specifically and its conflicts of interest, though they are no orphan in the Big Four or large consulting organisations. How are you using those consultants in subsequent rounds, given your assurance that you're building your staffing capability?
Yes, Senator. So EY's engagement with us on round 1 concluded at the end of June.
Concluded when?
I believe at the end of June. Is that right, Ms Braid?
I believe that's right.
I have them here contracted till the 30th of the 11th, and I'm looking at Senate order for entity contracts.
Okay, well, Senator, if I may, we'll take that on notice, because I've certainly not been aware that we've been actively engaging with them, so it may be their contract was extended to a concluding period if there was any tidy-up work, but we are not using EY at this time in relation to future rounds.
Are you using any other consultants in relation to this critical work of negotiation and establishment of multi-million-dollar contracts?
So, Senator, we have concluded the contracting phase of round 1 and 2. That's what we concluded at the end of June. And in relation to now the next phases of that work, I'd have to ask the team if we've got any limited support in the team, but I don't believe we're using EY. We're certainly using external legal where it's appropriate. But if I could take on notice just to give you complete visibility.
I'd be curious to hear what your plans are in relation to contracting large firms to do core work. That is a core function of Housing Australia.
So, Senator, absolutely.
Absolutely core.
And
it is highly risky, given their diverse industry tentacles and wide reach as a client, that there are risks of conflicts of interest that this Parliament is very alert to and needs assurance on. Are you required to publish your contract data on AusTender?
Senator, we haven't been to date. We have just signed up to use AusTender in the last 6 weeks, and we've just started to use it to issue and manage tenders.
Do you have protocols in place for handling AI in relation to your use of Deloitte's or any other external contractors, including your legal contracts, given recent experience?
Yes, Senator, thank you. Housing Australia has regard to the artificial intelligence in government policy, which took effect in September of last year. Our confidentiality policy covers use of AI tools, specifically restricting staff from using confidential information in those tools under any circumstances. We don't prohibit the use of AI by contractors and consultants.
What, sorry?
We don't prohibit the use of AI by contractors and consultants. However, they are subject to our own confidentiality and privacy requirements under their contracts, and all data must retain in the ownership of and under the control of the organisation.
We've just had an experience where the government has paid a very sizable amount to find that AI was being used by Deloitte very inappropriately. So what you've told me then is not an adequate protection for you, and there are lessons out of recent experience that I hope Housing Australia might assure us about. Would you be willing to provide information about how you're going to respond looking ahead?
Senator, happy to take on notice. Just for clarity, you're asking us about our approach to safeguarding in the engagement of consultants.
What protocols you will put in place and requirements you would make of any external contractor in relation... So there's been wide discussion in the public sector about notice about the use of it, how you use it, who uses it, and clear transparency about that to protect against misuse.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We've certainly
I feel strongly about it. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Allow me to move on. I wanted to go back to the HAF. And I wanted to just pursue the distribution of funding via the HAF and the tenants who are going to live in these properties. Is there any mechanism within Housing Australia Future Fund to prioritise projects based on a particular need? I know these are very important projects for the kind of people you just talked about, Mr Langford, at Box Hill, and you know these are life-changing projects. So I'm really interested in whether there is specific targeting within the HAF for First Nations communities and, for example, young people who are at risk of homelessness.
Thank you, Senator. So in rounds 1 and 2, there was a range of proposals put forward, and Housing Australia followed the requirements of the investment mandate in relation to the different cohorts. Where an applicant specified a cohort as part of their proposal, that forms part of the framework funding agreement. So there's an expectation, and as they start to receive the availability payment, there are reporting obligations in terms of who is accessing those homes. I might ask Ms Harris to come to the table while I'm talking, because we may have some data we can share now, Senator, in relation to the different cohorts that might have been specified.
So I'm asking about a mechanism for prioritising, not so much the numbers. I would be delighted to receive information that those groups are being responded to, but I'm wondering whether you're targeting them in your decision making.
Sorry, Senator, as I wasn't there for some of the decision making, I'm just looking at Ms Armour, who was. And
so the investment mandate did specify target cohorts, and part of the criteria for assessment of applications included a focus on those cohorts.
And are you confident, Ms Armour, that they are being realised?
I think we were... No, we didn't get the responses for some of the cohorts that we were hoping. We can start at the most, in round 1, at the most high-level cohort. We didn't have the level of social housing that we were hoping for, and so the government decided round 2 to focus on social housing. But cohorts like Indigenous Australians, we didn't have the level that we were hoping for.
Senator, I think Ms Harris has some data that she could share.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I have the data. So out of the committed 18,650 dwellings so far, the respondents have indicated a number of 13,756 of general non-targeted. So that would be people that meet social and affordable criteria. 2,881 have been targeted towards frontline workers. 803 dwellings for older women at risk of homelessness. 570 dwellings for victims of domestic violence. 531 dwellings for Indigenous Australians, and 109 dwellings for veterans.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You're almost at time. Maybe one more question.
One more question. Yeah. So I'm curious about Commonwealth rent assistance and its role in keeping rents low for tenants. Young people receive income payments from Services Australia to receive a lower rate of Commonwealth rent assistance, as I understand it. Does this mean that community housing providers will preference tenants with higher Commonwealth rent assistance? I'm just curious to find out how that works, and given the financial model, is there a driver in there to go for people who are getting more Commonwealth rent assistance?
Sorry, Senator, I'm just thinking about the mechanics of that. I think your question is in relation to, it would be social housing for income-based rents, and typically for young people who are on youth allowance or the like, where they would attract. So the applicants would have factored that in. If I reflect on my experience running a community housing provider, we would have factored that into the ask of the funding in round one, and in round two would have factored it into the financial model. So it's been considered if they've specified that as a target group. I can't speak to in general terms, but it is also why we have the programs like the NIF Crisis and Transitional Housing, which is targeting young people, because it is a cohort that is hard to serve, because the rent they are able, or the contribution they're able to make to rent is much lower in general.
So just so I'm sorry, I may be slow in understanding this, but if a provider who you are financing to build social housing believes 20% of its tenants will be young people with lower rent assistance, you expect them to put that into their modelling of their financial outcome and to have it covered by the way in which they negotiate with you. Is that right?
That's right. In round one, Senator, they had the opportunity to say these are the rents that we think we will attract, and where a provider may have said, well, look, we want to house young people, they would be able to say, well, that's reflected in the rents in the financial model.
Do you see any gap in assistance to people on lower rates of rental assistance in the way you're financing housing, social housing?
I think within the programs that we've currently got, Senator, I think they're provided for as part of the overall outcomes within the social housing targets.
Senator, if I can add, many community housing providers offer a range of tenancies to a range of cohorts, and they all attract different income-based rents. An aged pensioner couple will attract a higher income-based rent than a single youth allowance other recipient. That's a feature of income-based rents. But in my experience, and Mr. Langford will correct me if I'm wrong, community housing providers think about their mission and their mandate across all of the groups, and then try to make that mix work for them financially across the whole of their renter population.
I'm going to rotate the call now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your answers.
Very brief, just one follow-up. A young friend of mine with no life just like me has been listening in, and she texted me saying that her bank had called her a few weeks ago and just cold called her and said, would you like a home loan with a 5% deposit? And her response was, are you effing stupid? Are banks cold calling people to sign up to the 5% deposit scheme?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
There's no restriction on them doing this?
I will ask my colleague, Ms Jarman, to confirm, but I don't believe, Senator, that there is a restriction on banks conducting marketing of their products in the normal course of their business.
I mean, we've just been through a huge financial scandal with Shield and Guardian, and I think at the centre of that, I'm not the expert on that, but I think at the centre of that was cold call marketing, which convinced people to take on financial products that were well beyond their risks. There's been no consideration given to the risks here of, again, to what I said about moral hazard. The bank faces no risk here. Customer faces no risk. There is a risk they might. Can I just finish my question? Sorry.
Yeah.
So there is a risk here that the banks go, great, this is free money, and start cold calling vulnerable people to push mortgages on them.
Senator, can I make a suggestion? Yep. If you can provide us with...
I'm not providing individual... I mean, this person obviously wasn't vulnerable. They know what they're doing, but I'm not providing individual cases. But my question is general, so I'm worried about that. I'm worried about that if that's what's happening.
It's very hard to follow up a hypothetical, Senator. If you provide the name of the bank, I'm sure my colleagues can talk to the bank.
It's not a hypothetical, it's a risk. It's clearly a risk that doesn't seem to have been...
Senator, Ms Jarman can talk to what's in the panel agreement with lenders.
Sure. Senator, Housing Australia does not stipulate the marketing activities of the lenders under the scheme, other than to ensure that they represent the scheme in an appropriate and factual way as specified in the investment mandate and the rules.
Yep, so we're trusting the banks. Okay, sounds like a good strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Well, Senator, as I indicated before, first of all, you asserted it's free money. It's free money for the banks. I'm entitled. You made an observation. I'm entitled to respond, and I will.
You moved on.
And I will. You asserted that this was free money for the banks. That is absolutely incorrect. You asserted you asserted that we're just leaving it to the banks. There is a prudential regulation framework that applies to every bank and doesn't treat people who have a 5% deposit any different to people who are a second home buyer, a third home buyer, and pay a 20% deposit. I reckon that's fair enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I just want to come back to the FOI issue. So who's leading the FOIs?
Senator, is that in relation to Housing Australia?
Yes, Housing Australia.
So the administration of FOIs currently sits with Ms Braid's area.
Okay, well, can she come back? So I wanted to ask you about a document which I think you provide. So do you have a standard contract at Housing Australia
Yes, we do.
for the recipients of funding?
Senator, sorry to interject across the top of Ms Braid, but I might answer that question. If you're talking about the
funding contract.
Your question is in relation to a specific program, Senator? Sorry.
Yeah, in relation to the Housing Future Fund.
So for the Housing Australia Future Fund facility and the National Housing Accord facility, for round 1 and round 2, there was a standard. Baseline document that then applicants, particularly in round 1, proposed a range of what we call departures from the standard terms that would be negotiated with an applicant relevant to their proposal.
And it's a couple of 100 pages?
When fully compiled, Senator, it would probably be a couple of 100 pages because it includes a range of attachments.
Okay.
So it sets out, for example, schedules that are about plans, so plans might get appended to it, timetables, tenancy policies and the like.
The reason I'm boring you with this is
You're
because...
not boring me at all, Senator.
My understanding is that on page 102 of this sort of standard, it says the recipient acknowledges that Commonwealth requirements and policies will require certain identifying details of the funding documents to be made available to the public via the internet. Does that sound like something that would exist in this contract?
Well, Senator, I don't have the benefit of having the contract in front of me, but it sounds like a reasonable term of a contract. I would need to check if it is in that, but it sounds like a reasonable term.
Okay. So you disclose on AusTender how much money the recipients receive, right?
I don't believe we do on AusTender in terms of the funding agreements, but...
on your website then?
We do disclose. There is a reporting requirement under the investment mandate, and we have also recently been reporting through the Murray motion the funding commitments made.
Okay. So you contract with organisations, they know that they're going to have documents disclosed, or at least the funding arrangements disclosed. Then you do disclose the details of the contracts on your website. So I'm just wondering, like, what would be so secret that couldn't be disclosed to the public?
Senator, the contracts we have on our website, the standard form contracts, aren't complete. They don't have the pricing, the amounts, the terms. And we have respected in our disclosure the commercial arrangements for particular projects, because you could see why that may be disadvantageous to an applicant if an in-flight project has details disclosed. Are you looking for disclosure of that sort of information, or?
Well, I guess I can see here that this Assemble organisation is likely to receive $2.2 billion. In exchange, it's going to supply 2,791 homes. And I'm wondering why the information that was exchanged between Housing Australia and the major owner of this organisation can't be seen by the public.
But
So, Senator, I think you're referring to the conversation we had earlier about a specific FOI.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about the contracts that are being entered into with an eligible funding recipient. And for the avoidance of doubt, Assemble are not an eligible funding recipient in their own right. They are financing an eligible funding recipient. The Assemble projects are largely being delivered in a partnership with Housing Choices Australia, and I believe in the case of one in Victoria, currently Aboriginal Housing Victoria are also a partner, and they form part of that arrangement. To your question, I mean, we had that discussion earlier, Senator, about the FOI document, and I can't comment on it. We can't comment on it because we're not, neither Ms Armour nor I have the detail of what's in that document, and can't offer an opinion.
We've taken it on notice. Haven't you taken that on notice?
Well, I think he's answered the question to the extent that he can.
I think he took it on notice before, in the earlier part of the discussion. Okay. So, yeah, okay. Now, tell me about the Housing Australia Future Fund. How many houses is it built now?
So, Senator, our role is funding of projects as set out in the investment mandate, but we've committed funding to projects, so we've committed funding to 46% of the total target of 40,000 homes, and it includes 889 homes that have been completed.
How many is it finished? How many?
889.
Okay. And how many of those were bought?
Senator, I think we covered this earlier, and I'll just have to go back to my notes.
No, I know that.
So would you like me to go back to the notes and recover that, Senator?
Well, as you know, Senator Gallagher talked about 340 being acquired and converted. So I'm just wondering how many of the 800 were acquired and converted?
So,
just remind
Senator,
we've got 15 minutes left. So.
I'm going as fast as I can.
Yep, thank you, Senator Bragg.
So thank you, Senator. So as I said earlier, in response to another question, the HAF does not acquire homes.
But, okay, well, sorry, I need to stop you then. So I need to ask you again. So Senator Gallagher gave evidence to this committee that it had acquired 340 houses. So when you say doesn't acquire, I don't see how that matches up with what the good minister has told the Senate.
Well, Senator, I won't speculate on what the minister had in mind at the time, but I can observe that she may have been trying to convey what I'm now trying to put in very clear terms, which is that the HAF does not acquire homes. It is able to provide funding to eligible funding recipients who can develop homes in their own right, or they can contract with a developer for a new home at various points in the development cycle.
Okay. So this is an important point. What the HAF is doing relates to the fact that some community housing providers make arrangements with development partners where they acquire newly completed homes when those homes have completed the construction process.
So they buy them.
So they're not wandering around buying.
They're buying them.
43, Point and Place, Villawood.
They're buying them.
Yes, but those homes are only being built.
Acquiring means buy.
Listen, if you want to talk over me in order to try and make some sort of puerile political point, what I'm pointing out to you in order to have absolute clarity about this, because what you have sought to do is to misrepresent the terminology that the sector uses. So they make arrangements with community housing providers who secure new housing stock by providing certainty to development partners that when they build a home, it will be acquired by them. In the absence of that arrangement, the home would not be built. And there is some existing homes.
They're buying them.
Occupied by people are not being acquired under the fund. She did not say existing homes. What the fund is doing is supporting community housing providers who make those arrangements, and that secures new construction.
Yeah, but you're conceding that they're buying them.
Well, they are providing financing arrangements that secures new home construction, and those contracts are completed when the home is complete. It's payment on delivery, Senator Bragg. Payment on delivery.
They're buying them.
Well, they're not renting them.
Acquire means buy.
They are.
Acquire means buy.
Payment on delivery. The house is built. Tick.
Yeah, they buy them.
There's the dough.
So they're not building them; they're buying them.
Well, they are facilitating the construction of a house by providing a guarantee that when the house is completed, consistent with the contract, that it will be purchased, and that is how
they're buying them.
That those homes would otherwise not exist.
Okay, so you're saying it's up to 800.
So, Senator, the completed is...
It's a specific number. He gave you it's not an up to number, it's a number.
Up to means they've either bought or built 800.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same.
Well, it's not. Buying and building is different.
It's no.
Different
because
thing.
Because they don't get built unless they're bought. It's the way the market works, mate. Like like that is how it works. In the absence of these arrangements, these homes don't get built. 839 or 89 or whatever it was have been secured thus far. The problem with your story that you are trying to tell people is that the number of houses being completed goes up every day. And at the end of this process, because they are being built, because they are being bought, there is no other way to secure. There is no other way to secure the construction of these homes. They otherwise wouldn't exist.
The government is buying homes.
The government is supporting the construction of homes that otherwise would not be built. And the problem with the
government's buying them.
Political narrative,
yeah, that would be great,
is that the amount of homes keeps increasing over time, and your story keeps looking sillier.
That's because they're buying them.
All right.
And more puerile.
Senator Bragg's got one more question, then we will finish off the evening with Senator Pocock. Thank you, Senator Bragg.
So I want to ask you about these allegations in the papers today. Housing Australia Chair tried to write own minutes. So what's this all about?
It's absolutely surprising allegation. Reject the imputation that article makes. There is nothing inappropriate with the chair of a board ensuring that minutes are produced, and there is not a problem with that. The article seems to suggest that minutes may be going into some sort of record that don't reflect the views of the Board of Housing Australia. Well, I attended the next meeting of the Board of Housing Australia where we reviewed the minutes that the Acting Company Secretary had prepared, and we actually made suggestions for changes to reflect the views of the Board about those minutes, and those changes were made. There is absolutely nothing exceptional about the behaviour in relation to preparation of minutes.
And how many times does the board meet each year?
The board has a schedule of generally monthly board meetings, but we have, over the period of the new programs being put into place, we have had a number of ad hoc meetings when it was necessary to establish the strategy and approach in relation to those new programs.
Thank you very much, Senator Bragg. Senator Pocock.
Ms Amord, having just listened to your answer, I know you're an experienced board member. When you look at this board and your experience of it, how would you rate it relative to your other experiences? Because there are concerns about the nature of the leadership and the functioning of the board. What comments would you make about the way this board has worked?
So the board is effectively leading an organisation that has undergone considerable change as new programs have been introduced, and has led an organisation that has delivered fabulously in a relatively short time on those new projects. Boards, I don't think you rate boards, but what I see is...
I've been on a few and I'd rate them. Why wouldn't you rate the board?
Because actually what I see is a bunch of committed professionals from bringing a good diverse range of skills to solving an issue and the problem, if you like, the problem we're all interested in is how to make better housing solutions for Australians. When people talk, like you just did in that question, about concerns about the board, where are those concerns? Senator Bragg just took me to an article where 2 unnamed sources said something, but those unnamed sources actually had the facts incorrect. I really think we all have a bit of a responsibility to actually look at facts and performance and not perhaps some unattributed comments that may...
Not all the comments are unattributed. The legal counsel has made public comment in his own name and he resigned and left the organisation. When I hear the data that we heard about turnover, 25%, that's a very high level of turnover. So I personally have concern. I listen carefully to legal counsel. They're usually very senior and experienced people, and he is on the record as saying this paraphrasing, he definitely had concerns.
So and I know that gentleman, actually attended university with him. He resigned from the organisation in September 2023. We are now in November 2025. We're interested in how the organisation is going now. The organisation has had a new CEO. That CEO's been in place for just over a year. The organisation today is one that's different from the organisation at the time that legal counsel resigned. But would like to say that it's absolutely essential that we listen to concerns that people have, particularly staff members, and you're right that we need to be following the turnover questions, and we are. We're vitally interested in those.
I would be very worried if I was leading an organisation with 25% staff turnover. Just one last line of question, because I'm wearing out and I'm sure everyone else is ready to stop. It's in relation to the 100,000 homes policy. Thank you for your answers, incidentally. The government committed to investing a $10 billion to build up 100,000 homes for sale only to first home buyers. In its media release, the government said, quote, in addition to the 100,000 homes for first home buyers, our investment will unlock more housing supply through these projects, including options. I haven't seen any public details on this. I may have missed it. Could you please explain how this $10 billion investment will build social and affordable housing?
Senator, that measure obviously was an election commitment. In the period since the election, the public service has been working to support government to implement that election commitment. In this particular case, that involves negotiations with each of the states and territories. Those negotiations are well underway. In the 5.5 weeks I've been in this job, I've had, I would say, a dozen discussions with states and territories about this program. But the outcome of those negotiations is not yet known and is still really subject to further government decision making.
So how long have those discussions been going on for?
I imagine they started in June, July, something of that order?
Yeah.
It was crosswork.
Yeah.
This year, July 2025.
Yeah.
How are you going to ensure that only first home buyers will be able to access houses built under this scheme?
Senator, that's one of the things that we're working through with states. Some states and territories have existing programs that are relevant to this commitment. So we're working that through at a jurisdiction level, but the government's election commitment is very clear about the objective of those negotiations, and that's something we'll be working on with the states and territories.
And when do you expect to be able to, as the federal authority, to give us more details on the policy and to begin the wheels to actually turn?
Senator, there'll be information about this measure in budget and MAIFA documentation in due course. The government's commitment is that construction on some of these homes will start in 26-27 and that people will move into the first of these homes in 27-28. So I think you can infer from that that this is a very high priority for us.
Thank you. Thanks for your answer. Thanks, Jeff. You got, yep, sure.
Just one more. Can I just ask, Ms. Armour, do you know whether the chair attended the Audit and Risk Board subcommittee meetings?
The chair has attended. She's not a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, but she has attended meetings, yes.
Okay. Is that a breach of the board charter?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, at 7:59, that concludes today's hearings. Thank you to all witnesses who appeared and to Hansard and Broadcasting for their assistance. I remind senators that the committee has agreed that any written questions on notice should be lodged with the Secretariat by Friday 14th November and that answers should be returned by Friday 19th of December. The committee stands adjourned.